right. Welcome, everybody on YouTube, everybody in Discord. We're going to get started here. So what we're doing today, we're doing a little call-in show. Which religion is true? Going to be using the conversational technique called Street Epistemology. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's a conversational technique that's non-confrontational. We talk about how you arrived at a conclusion, what got you to your certain level of confidence, however confident you are, and we talk about how you arrived at your conclusion. So today I am not joined by David. Usually I am, but today I am joined by Eric. Eric, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric. My YouTube channel is called Skeptics and Scoundrels. I'm also co-host over on The Line, usually the Sunday show. You can catch me on there at least once a month. And I've been very fascinated by street epistemology for about a year now, after watching certain online personas like Anthony Magnabosco, Pine Creek Doug, Reed, Pierce. I think it's an excellent conversation style to not really directly confront anybody to change their beliefs or tell them that they're wrong about a position, but it's a great conversational technique to really get them to challenge themselves and to really justify things they claim to be true. And the idea is that if they actually don't have something to be true, if they are actually holding a position that isn't true or a position that isn't quite justified in their confidence, to hopefully maybe lower that a little bit, maybe discover some cognitive dissonance and kind of amplify that and get them to think on their own later on. And hopefully the hope is that they come back later on, or even just on their own some other time, to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not quite justified. Maybe I shouldn't quite have that confidence that I should have in that belief. And I think it's a fun way to challenge yourself, fun way to challenge us. And it's, I like it a lot, and I can't wait for tonight. This is gonna be really fun.
Cool. Yeah. And just as a reminder for the people watching on YouTube, I did drop a link in the chat. It's also in the description. Add a link to PNR. So if you want to come on and chat with us, you can do that. Or if you just want to join PNR, because it's pretty cool around here, I'd say. So you can do that as well. And Eric, I've been doing street epistemology for quite some time, since like late 2019 is when I came across Anthony's videos. Mm-hmm. Lately, I've been doing something a little bit different. I've been incorporating nonviolent communication into basically my street epistemology, and I think it's something that's like super value. Have you ever heard of nonviolent communication, Eric?
I have not heard that actual phrase put together, but I can make assumptions off of it. It seems self-explanatory, but give me the details. Let me know what it's about.
Sure. It's I don't really like the name. The name isn't really what. Nothing against it, but it's very negative. It's like non-violent. I don't know. But
kind of like non-murderous conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a way of talking about people where you address their needs and you understand their needs, or you communicate your needs by going through what you're observing or what they're observing, the feelings, what you're feeling, they're feeling, the needs. I'd like to try to talk about that one in specific without actually saying the word need, and then requesting what we can do about it, the strategy.
Cool. Sounds pretty awesome.
Well, without further ado, we can get started with our first caller. So let's see. Let's bring up this person. Hello there, Big Bear. How's it going?
Bear.
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Doing swell.
Is that Big Bear like the ski resort, or is it just a big furry animal?
Not the ski resort.
Okay. I was asking because I used to live near Big Bear.
Cool. No, it's Brother Bear.
Okay.
So, topic today, which religion is true, right?
Yep, that'd be correct.
I think it's kind of a misleading question, because without knowing what religion really means, no one's able to answer the question. But looking to the Bible, what it states is that in James 1:27, pure religion and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their adversity, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. So, in terms of what true religion is, I believe it simply refers to pursuing a godly lifestyle. It refers to believing in the one true God and trying to pursue Him as your main objective in life. That's what true religion. Now, once one considers that, pursues it, and understands it with knowledge and wisdom, you will come to the understanding of the Son of God, who is Jesus Christ. And that itself is also the true religion, which is Christianity. But I think framing is properly speaking, important here, right? Because when we talk about religion, again, I'll just say it's what are you devoted to? What do you consider the highest value, the highest good? And what do you consider the thing that you should give the most import to in your life, right? So if God exists, that's clearly what we should be focusing on. And I believe that that's the case in Christianity as well. So I would say in that case, right, believing in God, believing in the Son, this is the true religion.
Do you consider it possible for a God to exist and this God wouldn't care? Like let's say for instance, a God exists. We're not sure which God it is, Christian, Muslim, Jewish God, or the other ones that we've had. Do you think that it's possible for a God to exist and it just doesn't care what you think about it? Like it doesn't care if you acknowledge his existence, doesn't care about worship, doesn't care about anything like that? Like, is it possible?
No, not really. I think if God created, it shows some kind of so.
Is
If
it
by God
impossible?
we mean like a creator, right?
I'm sorry, but is it possible for a God to create and not care about what its creation thinks? Why is it necessary to follow that a
know
God
how
must
one.
care?
Okay, so like if it, well, I'm not sure. So in the sense that if I were to create something, I wouldn't say there was a purposelessness behind it. I would say there was an intentionality. Therefore, it's not seemingly possible, in my understanding, for God or some kind of intentional being to make something without having a care, some kind of understanding or purpose behind it, right?
So that would be your, like, if you were God, you created, you would want it to acknowledge you, and that's because you just stated that that's your opinion. Like that would be my preference if I created. But can't a God have a preference different than that, different from yours? Why would a God have to align with your preferences? Like, couldn't a God be outside of those preferences? That's what I'm asking. Like, is it possible? I'm not saying if it's actually the case, but just is it possible?
I mean, it's I don't really think it's possible because, like I said, if you are creating something, it shows some kind of intention. So if there's an intention, there's a purpose. If there's a purpose, there's a meaning.
So if it's impossible for a God to create and not want it to acknowledge its existence and worship him.
Well, okay, that's not quite what I said. I mean, maybe it's possible.
Well, I'm asking if it's possible.
Worship.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm asking if it's possible, and your response is no. If a God created, then obviously the God has a purpose, and that purpose would involve worship and acknowledgement.
Yeah.
So you are saying it's impossible.
Well, I can't currently understand how we could talk in a real sense about there being a creator without a design. So the design reflects the intention, and the intention has a meaning. I'm not sure how we can talk about God as I understand him without including those things, unless we're stepping outside of agency, which is not in my definition of God. So
perhaps we want to back up.
Do you disagree with that?
Yeah. So let's I'll pass it over to Pierce because I'm already off the SE framework here. So let's go ahead and go back and try again. Go ahead,
I suppose going on the line, or was it the line? Is that what the show?
Yeah, the line.
Yeah.
Give me some bad habits for SE context. But
I suppose you're forgiven, Eric.
Thank you so much.
So, Big Bear. So it sounds like you believe in this God. Sounds like a God of Christianity, if I was hearing correctly. And I'm wondering how you got to this conclusion. Can you walk me down that path?
I can't take you all the way, but I would say that I would defend God in terms of his revelation publicly. In terms of his private revelation, I would say it's impossible to defend. It comes down purely to faith. So the fact that I have intuitions that lead me towards God is something that is not necessarily externally verifiable to you, but I do think Christianity provides an obviously coherent framework that one can, spiritually understand and lean into for their own greater good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. So you said
So when, sorry,
um
when I like investigated that, I thought that was true, right?
okay. So what I kind of heard was like you have your intuitions, and that kind of led you to your conclusion that this God is real. And you said like publicly, like me, maybe Eric, maybe somebody else who knows, they might they're not going to be able to like trust your intuition, so that wouldn't be something that's like verifiable to them. They're not going to be able to use that to know if this God exists. I guess my question is, I'm wondering, with regards to your intuition, like, how do you know that your intuition is correct?
Well, I think I had to. Well, I'm not entirely sure my intuition is correct, right? But I have good reasons to believe that it is, and those reasons are ultimately going to be like rooted in my own way of thinking. I'm not going to deny that. I don't
Mhm.
want to tell you you have to think the same way as me. But I think that if you were to investigate Christianity, even just the external, without having to have a personal revelation or something, you can see that it is consistent and that it benefits you when you practically apply it according to reason. On that basis, I would say it's externally verifiable, even if you yourself cannot know, just like whether or not everything in the Bible is absolutely true or something like this, right? Those kind of things are going to come after faith. But you see, my point is, you can test it in terms of what we can know about it, even though the actual faith may be something more related to that which is unknown.
Okay. Okay, we can test it. Okay, that's interesting. What does this test look like?
The test would be, if you have the promises of God, which are outlined in the scriptures, God says he'll do certain things for you depending on how you respond to him. So if God says, hey, if you seek me with all your heart, I will also incline myself towards you, and I'll make myself known. Or when he says, when Jesus says, whatsoever you ask the Father in my name, I shall surely grant it. These are things that, if God is true, he has to respond to you and give you an external understanding that you yourself are aware of, by application, right? That's what I mean. So you can test the public, or like you can test the revelation of God by looking at the promises of God and trying to apply them to yourself and seek him diligently. That's the only method I really know to tell you about how you can verify your understanding of God. But again, like, the private understanding of God is not the public understanding of God.
Can you explain what happens when this verification, as you describe, occurs? Because just to kind of like recap what we talked about so far, you were talking about your intuitions, and you said that your intuitions could or could not be true, depending on the actual outcome. And then you appeal to the Bible a couple times, and then you said that if you apply the Bible and follow it, you can then verify, that there's a relationship with this God. If I'm misrepresenting you at all, please stop me and correct me. Um, what is this verification process? Like, what happens? Is it a feeling? Is it something tangible you can show yourself or others? What just can you describe it to me, basically?
I would say I can't empirically show you how it makes sense for me. That's why I tried to make that distinction. But
So,
in
okay.
terms of how I understand, in terms of how I came to it, I used to be an atheist. I rejected the idea of God, and I thought that the idea of all uh, designer beings was wrong. But the truth is, if God exists, right? If he actually revealed himself, and if he is as powerful as he says he is, then I thought, hey, all I need to do is incline myself to that understanding. And when I do so, by praying, by seeking counsel from people who actually have understanding or practicing their religion, yeah, the more that I drew near to God, when I was fasting, when I was praying, when I started reading the Bible, when I started analyzing my own thoughts and trying to think, hey, maybe I'm wrong about some of these presuppositions I have about God. That's when, in that surrender, I was able to find some kind of solace in my faith and actually see changes even in other people who were so far gone. So, for example, giving you a bit of a testimony, one big reason I came to Christ was because someone who looked up to me really closely, my cousin, he was utter. He was very depressed. He was involved in a lot of bad things, domestic abuse, drug abuse, etc. I knew him, right? And I knew what was in his ability. And I don't think that the change that I saw in him or in other people is something that they would have been able to produce on their own, right? And while that may not be like completely empirical sort of evidence, I'm saying on my journey, trying to apply the scripture, I found that to be quite convincing. Even outside of myself, I could say I had prayers answered. I could say I thought the Bible was convincing when I looked at manuscript traditions. I could say that it just appeals to my intuitions. But really, outside of myself, I saw changes in other people and things external to myself that ultimately convinced me that it's not just a product of my imagination. It's the fact that God is responsive to the things that he says he's going to do because he is God. Does that make sense?
I hear you. I hear you. And I just want to take a moment to say this. It sounds like this belief is very important to you. It sounds like it has changed your life, and it sounds like it's changed your cousin's life. And with that being said, if you were to drop this belief and not have it anymore, would you be okay as a person?
Okay, like would I be able to live with myself?
Yeah, would you be able to continue life? Would you be able to be happy?
Um, I think no, a part of me really believes that there has to be some kind of higher meaning or purpose to reality. There has to be a structure that really gives definition to the way that things are and why that's so. And if that
Hmm.
was replaced by mere random chance and chaos, I don't think that I would be able to find any kind of solace or something like that. I'd be left with something minimal, something bare bones that I might be able to scrape by with, but definitely wouldn't be able to live the fullest life that applies to my nature. I feel like in my own nature, there's something that cries out and wants to have the ultimate truth, wants to really participate in something greater than myself. And only in God do I find kind of solace and comfort.
With that being said, man, I don't know if I had a question all lined up, but if that question gets you to reflect on whether this God claim that you believe in is true, I don't know if I want to ask that because I mean I'm kind of concerned that you would be less happy, right? And I don't want to cause unhappiness.
I mean, my go like I don't care like in terms of what's true, it doesn't matter. It's not material to me what makes me happy. What's material is what's true. Like everything I'm telling you, I'm
Uh,
saying and speaking with such passion only because I think it is really true. If it
okay.
were something that merely provided me some kind of escape, then it would be meaningless. If you could show me that this thing that I'm trying to understand is just cope, then I would abandon the whole project. I wouldn't have any desire for it. And that's what I'm saying. Like what's true is ultimately what matters. And I
So it
believe that God is true.
sounds like you value truth more than any comfort the belief could potentially provide.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
kind of a tangent question there. So you said that your happiness, your general contentment in life would decrease if you realize that, say, God didn't exist, or perhaps Christianity is false. Lots of other people have gone through that process. Like I myself, I used to be a Christian. I realized that my Christianity was false in my late 20s. And since then, my happiness in life has actually increased. Sure, there were some bumps along the way. There was a couple of dips when I was going through my deconversion process. But eventually, I reaped a net benefit, a net gain in my life's happiness since then. And it's been 15 years, and my happiness is either stable or still increasing. And there's other people out in the world also, experiencing that. Um, why do you think that they aren't affected? It's fine that you think you would be affected in this way, and I believe you that, yeah, if you lost your Christianity, you lost your faith in God, your happiness would decrease. But why do you think other people experience the opposite? Like, can you speculate maybe what their mental process is, maybe what their values, how their values change? Like, what do you think happens there for those people? Why do they get the opposite result of what you're expecting for yourself?
Like people like you specifically?
Myself or anybody else. I mean, I know many atheists, and many of them are very, very happy. I know a bunch that will explicitly say, "I'm way happier than I am. I'm way happier I am now than I was back when I was a Christian." So there are people
Okay.
out there that are the
Well, yeah.
opposite of what you anticipate will happen to you. And I'm just asking, can you speculate maybe what's the difference between those people and yourself?
It's hard to speculate, I would say, because everybody is so unique.
Hmm.
But
Fair enough.
I don't know. I think that it's possible to get higher levels of happiness just by working on yourself. Like, I don't deny that one can engage in this world, one can work on themselves, one can set goals, one can, you know, try to comprehend certain things, science, other things, wisdom in general, and they can improve their own happiness. But at the end of the day, I don't see the question of does this make you happy?
Hmm.
To me, truth, like, for instance, vaccines, doesn't really matter if getting a shot makes you happy. It doesn't. Someone could, really hate needles. Getting a vaccine is still be good for that person, right? So what I'm saying is my happiness is immaterial to the truth. It just so happens that the truth itself makes me happy. And if for you, like, you're able to find improvement, you're able to grow as a human being, I don't see that as a contradiction. I just see that as every person being unique to themselves.
Okay.
May I ask a question regarding your cousin?
Sure.
Hypothetically speaking, if your cousin, instead of, I'm assuming he was an atheist, he or she was an atheist, and then is now a Christian, is that assumption correct?
Yeah. Well, no, they were like someone who believed in God, but then became like more Christian. They
Okay,
were not living for God, or not um, submitting to God's will,
gotcha. Okay,
and then they were.
understood. If your cousin believed in God but no specific religion, and then they picked up a religious book, and it happened to be the book that many Hindus use to come to their conclusion that their gods exist, and then he or she was completely engrossed in Hinduism, and you saw this change. They went from depressed to totally satisfied with life. Would this be an indication that Hinduism is true?
In and of itself, probably not. No, like I said, I've already said that you can find happiness in many other things, because happiness is like a relative measure of where you stand, not only with yourself but in society or in the world. So, like, by itself, no. What I'm telling you is there's a cumulative process, and the external things influenced me more so than my own internal things, right?
Okay. Do you have a
So,
best
like, I could
example?
say of what?
Do you have a best example of, you said it's like a I can't say that word. Don't make me say that word. Cumulative. I think I said it right. What's the best piece of that case?
The best piece of that case probably would be the consistency of scripture. But even that, that's just going to be like something external that we can use to verify. We would still have to have some kind of internal revelation or private understanding
Hmm.
of God, because in terms of salvation, I think it comes down to, do you have a faith in the ultimate reality, in the ultimate being, and in why you exist and why your nature is the way that it is? that
Okay.
can help you understand life better.
Okay, I hear you. I think what you're saying is what comes internally is really the important part. Am I hearing that correctly?
I think it's the primary part, yeah. But in terms of
Okay.
like for you in this conversation, yeah, I would say what I can show you, what I can talk about, what I can like actually sit here and diagnose and question would be scripture. Is it consistent? Is there like any kind of contradictions in it and so on?
Could just kind of examine one of those points. Could a book be 100% consistent internally, but still be false, say false things?
I think that it sounds a bit unreasonable to say that something is completely internally consistent and still wrong.
Because I can,
At least
for
when it
example,
comes to something like religion.
because
But it's possible that
go ahead.
yeah, it is possible that there are, different worldviews that are consistent that aren't true. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, worldviews, books, you make logical arguments that are completely consistent and completely false. So, I guess like when you appeal to, the consistency of the Bible, and I could roll with that and say, yeah, there's no contradictions in the Bible. There's no, internal errors in the Bible. It never disagrees with itself. But how would it follow that if you have a book that's 100% internally consistent, that what that book actually says is true? Like, how do you make that follow?
Well, it's like I said, it comes down to faith. So I can't explain to you all the reasons why I have faith, but I can say that God did reveal Himself to me, which is an internal claim, and then I can say, based on my understanding of that, it seems evident, based on the externally revealed or publicly revealed things, that that's the case. Um, I mean, again, I'll just concede that, yeah, you could have something consistent and not be true, but in this case, I don't think that would be the scenario.
Okay, uh, so we've gone from looking at my notes here, we've gone from intuitions to a couple of scriptures what the Bible said, and then we had some anecdotes about an anecdote about your cousin, and then we talked about, okay, does emotional need have any bearing on determining the truth of it? You said no to that, and then we went to consistency of a holy book, your Bible, and then but we've established that consistency there also doesn't lend any weight to the truth value of the claims within, and now we've kind of gotten to faith. So, do you mind if we talk about faith a little bit? Like, kind of drill into that and kind of examine that? Is that
No.
with you? Okay.
Yeah.
So can you describe to me what faith is to you? Like, what is your definition of faith? What is it? What does it mean to you? How does it work, basically? Like, what's the kind of mechanical process behind it? I'm an engineer, so I'm always like trying to figure out, like, okay, how does something work? Piece by piece. Just can you give me your best description of what faith is?
I'm not sure. I don't have. I probably should have like a comprehensive definition, but like faith
No problem.
seems to be a means of understanding or applying that which is beyond perception to oneself. So even if I can't pull God down here in this VC and say, "Hey, look, here's God," he joins the call, da-ding, and he goes, "Hey, I'm God." Like, oh wow, that's definitely God. I can't do that. But that's what I'm saying. The way that our nature works, the way that we understand reality, the way that we apply moralities and principles to our lives, I think it has to align to some higher virtue. And if it's true, it should be congruent with the way that you understand the world. It should be something that gives you a higher explanatory power, puts you in a position to understand your own identity better, and then allows you to walk and carry that out in a way that improves your well-being. So those are the hallmarks of faith, I would say. But faith in and of itself needs to be that which indicates something beyond perception.
That which indicates something which is beyond perception.
Something like that.
Beyond perception, I'm a little hung up on that there because you perceive it in some sense, right? Maybe not with your eyes or with your nose or with your tongue, but you're perceiving something, right? You're detecting something. Your brain is, in a way, receiving some type of like stimulus through your faith, right? So you are perceiving it,
Yeah.
is the way I would look at it. But it's just
Yeah.
not with maybe your like your 5 tactile senses or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't divorce it from the reality of my being, but I would say it's transcendent.
I'm just going to go ahead and replace that with tactile senses in the definition that I have for you, just so I don't get too hung up on that. So when it comes down to faith, on a scale of 1 to 100, just like give it a percentage value, how reliable do you think faith is when coming to truth values?
Oh, like 68%.
68, just like 6.8?
Mm-hmm.
68% reliable. Is that regarding any type of truth value, or are there like different truth values that like I have a higher percentage? Like I could have faith that my team is going to win the game tomorrow, or I can have faith
No, I'm
that a
just
God is
saying.
real.
I'm just
like,
saying that when it comes to spiritual apprehension or religious understanding, you know, yeah, we can look towards the way that we're naturally oriented and see if it's congruent with our nature, and then our estimation of that should lead us to further questions, which should validate the initial hypothesis or understanding, right? So in
so
the same way that if like someone murdered somebody and you're like, oh, who did it? Well, you know that the maid was always around that person. You know that they may have had a special relationship, like there are indicators that might cause you to think, hey, maybe this is something we should look at. Maybe we should investigate this. So in that sense, your intuition, your nature should lead you to ask questions that guide you towards a greater understanding. And I think faith is a reliable method to come to that understanding.
if your intuitions and your preloaded, perception of the world, those assumptions you make are presuppositions, if you're into philosophy, let's say for a moment that you're in error in some of those, maybe some of them, maybe all of them, but just hypothetically, if you're in error for some of those, would your faith be able to tell you that you're wrong about those, or does your faith only confirm them? Because it sounds like you're starting with this set of presuppositions, a set of intuitions, and then using faith to confirm them. But my question is, just for a moment, pretend that you're wrong about those, some of them or all of them. Can your faith still confirm those in error? Or can your faith help you detect, oh, I got problems here. I need to go back and look more square one. Can your faith do that?
No, I think faith isn't. I think faith is more like if you're onto something, like it'll lead you to a set of initial presuppositions or something like that that will then guide you logically to create a coherent understanding, right? So that's the role of
So
faith.
so your faith will make you go back to your presuppositions and re-examine them, or direct you more to more correct ones, is what you're saying?
It'll show you what your presuppositions are and allow you to nudge
So
yourself more towards the truth in those, and then your
so you
understanding, your actual logical like worldview would have to be justified in and of itself. It'd have to be consistent.
okay. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of I'm starting to see a circle form in my head here, and I want to see if that's actually the case or not. Because before you were saying, okay, your presuppositions and your intuitions, faith reinforces those. So I mean, because I mean, in philosophy or any type of worldview, presuppositions usually come first. But now you're saying that the faith can actually go back and actually have you evaluate those presuppositions, and then that feeds back into your faith, and so now you got this kind of feedback loop where it just like, is that a proper representation? Because I'm hearing both ends here. I'm hearing that the intuitions informs the faith, and the faith informs the intuitions, and I'm seeing that as a
Yeah.
circle. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I don't have a problem with saying that it's that uh faith like re-examines itself. I'm just saying that faith is more about the congruity of your beliefs than it is the actual substance of them. So like I could
He-
think that the Trinity is true. I could think that God, Jesus has two natures, one nature. Um, the actual like veracity of that is related to the faith, but like in the way of what is intrinsically consistent, not just the actual dogmas or the actual beliefs themselves.
So with a book, like
I'm just trying to avoid I'm just trying to avoid like saying that faith is the actual belief, like as if saying faith is like the filioque or is some doctrine. No, faith is like that which guides you towards those things and keeps it consistent and helps you have confidence in your general understanding that guides you to those doctrines or principles, right?
Okay. I
And
guess my last question.
someone,
I got
go
one
ahead,
more
go
question, Pierce, if you don't mind. I got one more question to kind of wrap up this little tangent we're on. Earlier we acknowledged that, hey, we can have books and other internal systems, books, logical arguments that are internally consistent, yet they don't bear out truth. Can the same thing apply to your presuppositions and your worldview and your faith? That whole thing, like, could you perhaps be going through this feedback process? And I'll accept what you say, that as you go, it becomes more congruent, more consistent. Could that itself also lead to an internally coherent worldview and system of belief, and it still be false, just like the book or the logical argument?
It could. I mean, the entire universe could be entirely random. Nothing could have any order intrinsically, nothing could have any purpose. All logic and reasoning could bottom out in nothing. That if you wanted to look at the world that way, you can. I decided not to look at the world that way because I don't think that seems congruent.
Well, I'm not really
And
getting to.
that is a position I have on faith.
I'm not really getting to that a true worldview wouldn't be congruent. I think a true worldview would be congruent, but we can have, let's say there's one true worldview out there. Likely the case. It's congruent. It's internally consistent, and there's numerous others that are also congruent and internally consistent, but not true. So I guess my last question, if you indulge in one more, how does your faith help you identify that one worldview that is internally consistent, congruent, and true, and filter out all the ones that are not true?
I would say whether or not it comports to that which I know to be true based on my own nature. So when I reflect on my nature, I see certain virtues, certain powers. I see an intelligence in it. And then that which is consistent, I would say I can verify, right? That's still on faith. I can't prove it to you, but I know these things about myself, or I have certain intuitions that would help me understand it.
I wanted to bite onto the how do you verify it part, but I already promised a last question. I asked two, so I'll pass over to Pierce and let him take over for a bit. Maybe we'll back burner that for now. Maybe we'll get back to it in here a few minutes. We have time.
All right, sounds good. Big Bear, I'm wondering this. So I was listening to you talk to Eric, and you talked about faith and your intuitions. And I'm wondering if someone who, let's say, for example, they're a Hindu or a Muslim, whichever, it doesn't really matter. If they were listening and they were saying, well, Pierce, I actually use the same thing. I use faith and my intuitions, and that has led me to my conclusion, and I know my conclusion is correct. Does that mean that their conclusion that they're God or gods is correct because they've used kind of a similar method to you?
It's a difficult question. I think as far as the individual is concerned, yeah, if you apply yourself, if you try to understand your nature, and then you look towards a specific religion or way of thinking or worldview to try and verify that, and then if it returns useful results that you understand and believe, yeah, that would be decent as that what you believe is true. On the other hand, as I stated, faith is not dogma. So if someone has sort of a faith, but then their dogma inhibits them from coming to the fullness of the truth, then that's equally possible. Like someone could be raised in a different religion based on their location, their culture, certain prevailing attitudes or norms. And even though they have faith, their dogma will kind of prevent them from that. Like in some places, you'll be killed, for instance, if you don't believe a certain way. Then,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like that might hinder you. That might obstruct your view of the absolute truth. But the faith itself can still be there, and you can have a justification in that faith based on that. Yeah. So that might
I-
sound kind of like theism, but I don't think that's too much of a problem, because what I'm outlining here is more faith and public understanding versus private understanding of who God is, what he is, and what he wants you to do.
Gotcha. I think I got probably one last question for you. I got this buddy. His name's Alan. Really nice guy. You'd love him. You'd love talking to him. He's actually not from around here. He's an alien, and he just got here just like 5 minutes ago. He doesn't know anything about humanity. He knows how to talk to people, but he doesn't know anything about us. He doesn't know anything about human culture. None of that, human beliefs. He's a clean slate. And he hears us talking, and he heard me talking about faith and intuitions, and about the Hindu guys, and about you. And he wants to know, well, did the Hindus get it right, or did Big Bear get it right? How could he figure out who is correct?
Well, like I said, like, it's possible, I would say, to look and see what's the most internally consistent world, and then try to apply it to your life and see if it does comport with your nature, and if it's absolutely true. If the religion in question, like Christianity, you know, if you can say, hey, this is what God said he'll do, all I have to do is try to pursue that, and then if it's like consistent, and if it comports with your nature, you have good reasons to believe it. If not, that being, that extraterrestrial, would probably deny it. I'm not gonna say like, I'm not gonna invalidate that creature. Like, if it said, well, I just don't think that applies to me. I don't feel it. I don't understand it. It's not something that I believe in. I don't have too much beyond that to tell it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I can supplement that. So let's say hypothetically, we have two internally consistent congruent religions. So let's say we have Christianity and we have Hinduism. And then, what was it? Alan the alien, Pierce?
Alan the alien.
Alan the alien. Alan the alien lands. He's a blank slate. He looks at both of these religions and he sees that they're both internally consistent. They both rely on faith. Is there anything extra, that extra oomph you can give Alan, Big Bear, to sway him to Christianity's side?
To Christianity's side. So
Yeah.
said he doesn't agree. If he doesn't agree,
He examined both, and he says, I see both of these internally consistent. I see both followers exercise faith. They both describe this process so that you did, basically using your criteria. And he says, I don't see a difference between the two. I see a difference in beliefs and objective claims, but I don't see a method by which I should pick one or the other. Can you give him something extra that says Christianity's got this that Hinduism doesn't? Is there anything you can sweeten the pot with, basically?
really. So if you're okay with like understanding the consistency and the faith in that, then at that point it just turns to, what is the historical veracity of this? Can we get down to brass tacks and say, here's evidence for the resurrection, here's evidence for, the actual occurrences of prophecies taking place and so on, and then whatever the truth actually bears out in that case would be the one that you should pick. The initial faith itself that's not a problem for me.
Okay. One more question, just to kind of really drill down into it. Let's say Alan the alien said, okay, Big Bear, I used your process. I examined everything. I'm picking Hinduism. I'm assuming you would think that was an incorrect choice on Alan's part. What do you think Alan did wrong if he chose Hinduism?
I'm not sure. It could be that there's something about that religion that is externally appealing to them. Maybe it offers, for instance, money. It says, hey, you follow me, I'll give you money.
Maybe.
Whereas the true God says...
Not to interrupt you, but maybe Alan saw Hinduism's effect on his cousin at one point in his life.
Sure, yeah, I already conceded that would be that the initial understanding of that could guide you towards truth. Yeah, I mean, but I'm just trying to address the original thing. Like, if somebody said, "Hey, Hinduism is true," and they're actually wrong, then most likely something hindered them. For instance, perhaps there was a promise of wealth, and they value wealth more highly than they value what God values, which would be not valuing monetary gain, but valuing a holy life, right? One devoted simply to being just and kind and true and so on. But something about money or whatever else appealed to them more, so they were deceived internally. Um, and again, like I would concede that from faith you can arrive at false conclusions. It's not an absolute or an ultimate defense against critique. Um, but I think if you're being honest with yourself, then if you truly examine the issues, in this case, money versus like just being honest with yourself, honest with God, not valuing things of this world, then in that case, you would see, hey, look, this is that person being pulled away. They're being drawn into the world by the things of the world or by distractions and not by what's really true, if to be honest with themselves.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions I got for Big Bear. What
Yeah.
about you, Pierce?
Yeah, I think
All right,
now would
thank you.
probably be a good time to wrap up. Yeah, thank you so much for coming up on stage, Big Bear. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Big Bear.
All right, and we will move on to the next caller here. And I just want to reset the room just for a moment. We're not here to debate, although Eric might sometimes break into his old habits. But
I do two different things. I do an online show on the line, which is much more confrontational, and I try to turn that off here. It's not necessarily my preferred way to converse, but it's effective over there. It garners the audience, and it is a conversational style. It's as valid as any other one. But yeah, turning it off over here is I gotta struggle to do that. So yeah, forgive me if I cross any lines. I'll try to be gentle.
Yeah, it's all good. We just primed the audience to forgive you. So
yeah.
So what we're doing here is a non-confrontational approach. We are trying to collaboratively go through your belief, examine it, take us on a journey of how you got to your confidence in your belief, and we will go from there. With that being said, I think this person was the next with their hand up. So we shall see. Hello there.
Hey, what's up, Eric Pierce?
Hey, how's it going?
Greetings, Blonde.
Good.
Thunder?
How are you? That's right. Yeah, so I was going to say that my way of understanding this is I have like certain arguments, and these arguments are not just things that I popped up, they're done out of like intense reflections on reality. So mine is more of a Neoplatonic concept of God. And the way that I do that is just basically the way I fundamentally experience reality. I think given the way that I just have experience itself requires there to be something that is metaphysically simple, like the Neoplatonic one. Now, if you'd like me to, I can go into that.
I'd like you to explain what Neoplatonic means.
Oh, Neoplatonism is just a philosophy that builds up on Plato and is in Plotinus. It's a specific type of metaphysics in which all reality emanates from a first principle that's metaphysically simple to one. So from the one goes to the nous, to the world soul, and then to the world as we perceive it.
Yeah. So we are simple street epistemologists. So we aren't really philosophers. So if you can bring it down to layman levels and explain it that way, we're more than welcome to have a conversation. But if you get too down into the weeds of philosophy, you're going to lose us, and we're not going to really have a productive conversation. So it's up to you if you want to continue with that or not.
Oh, sure. I'll kind of put it in there. You know, I could actually then give more of one of my abductive arguments, which is a little less intense philosophically. It's probably something that, I'm kind of working on. So maybe it'd be good because it's not completely developed or fleshed out. So I could have kind of a conversation back and forth with you and we could go into it. It's based on just general experience that we have.
Actually,
easier to understand.
I would be more interested in whichever argument, reason, method, whichever one is more important to you. Whichever one, if you lost it, your confidence would go out the window.
Well, that's not kind of from an argument. That's just kind of more how reality presents itself to me as being meaningful. So the Neoplatonic argument itself is just a way of me giving like a rational understanding to it. So the way that I look at it is I'll have certain experiences that I understand as meaningful. And for them to be meaningful, I have to give some sort of kind of metaphysical weight to them. And that metaphysical weight to them means that they have to, in some sense, be real. So I would actually have a different view than Big Bear. And if you'd like to know it, it's I consider myself to be more pagan than Christian. And by that, I kind of see the primacy of archetypes over dogma. So to me, someone like Brother Bear, right, Big Bear, he's focusing more on dogma. I'm focusing more on archetypes as how things present themselves to me as meaningful and how I understand the world in a meaningful way. And I can give an analogy as to something that could possibly explain this difference between us. And I would say something like this: the issue I might have with something like Christianity. To use an analogy, let's go back to Milton's Paradise Lost and Satan. Satan there suddenly became romantic. Why? Because Satan took on the characteristics of a Byronic hero, which is a literary trope that which people tend to find attractive. And given that, I think there's just something in us that likes that archetype. And if that's the case, I would see that as an archetype going over dogma. So to me, Christianity is primarily a very dogmatic and no, it's not a script. I'm just a good speaker. It's primarily a doctrinaire and dogmatic religion, whereas mine is more. I experience the world through archetypes that are meaningful,
Right.
and I believe these to be real. That would be it.
So, so the kind of the goal of street epistemology is to look at a belief and examine why you believe it. That's kind of the point of the conversation. It's not really to like argue religions against each other at either an empirical or a philosophical level. So maybe to kind of bring it back down to where a street epistemology conversation would start is, can you maybe in like 2 or 3 sentences just describe to us what you actually believe? Not in terms of other, like against other religions, but just in your own words, what do you believe?
As far as the metaphysics is concerned, I'm going to believe everything emanates from the one, and I understand that in a very analogical way. So my position is not going to be, just so you know this, I'm not using this as a contrast. It's not going to be like the Christians where I have to have a very definite concept of God. So I understand this one as a simple entity. I'm not going to make too much predicates about it, or I don't think I can. And I believe that the way that I relate to it is through something like archetypes, like Jungian archetypes. That would be it.
If I were to translate this into something that is simple for my brain to understand, because my brain is like, this big, like a walnut. What I think you're saying is that everything we know and everything in the world eventually came from something that is one thing.
It emanated from it, yes.
Emanated.
And that one thing is a simple entity, according to your own words, right?
Yes, it has no parts in it whatsoever. And I know the problem that comes from that is how does the many come from the one?
A thing with no parts.
I'm familiar with that. Yes.
A simple entity with no parts. So that mean
Correct.
no attributes, or like when you say parts, what do you mean by parts?
I would basically mean any kind of metaphysical composition at all. Because if it had metaphysical composition, then it would require something to unite those quote unquote parts together. It wouldn't be the unconditioned reality again. It would exist through its parts. So it has to be something simple to be the unconditioned reality.
Before we get too into the weeds here, I really want to ask, why is this belief important to you?
Oh, well, this part is so I have kind of a rational grounding for what's meaningful for me. That's basically it. So the Neoplatonic argument, or the one that I'm giving, the idea of unity, it is something that I experience, but more or less this is just kind of used as a way to give these beliefs that are more meaningful for me kind of a rational basis behind them.
Can you give an example?
Okay, so like take for example the archetypes I experience. I can't prove to you. I can't give you a philosophical argument for the archetypes, not at all. So what I could give is something like a philosophical argument for the existence of the one, and that then gives my kind of position a rational strength. That would be it. And so, yeah, that's what I do that for.
I'm not. I may have lost the why it's important to you. I'm sorry. I just don't think I understood fully.
Okay, the reason the argument for the one is important for me because it gives a rational basis for my belief. It's important to me to have a rational basis, to feel as if in some way my position philosophically is stronger than both the atheist or the Christian. That's it. That's the reason for the Neoplatonic one.
Okay, so you value what is true. You want to believe what is true. Therefore, coming to this conclusion is important because you believe that it's correct. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is
And-
there? Go ahead, Eric.
Good. Well, I was gonna ask a little follow up. So I heard you say something about either verification or regarding this one. So you necessitate the need for this framework because you want to have or need to have a rational understanding of the worlds. Can any other frameworks or any other presuppositions or beliefs systems like that give you a rational understanding of the world, but it still be false? Basically, how do you make the jump from this framework works to this framework actually is true? This is very similar to Big Bear and us talking about like internal consistency and congruence with his beliefs.
Oh, I do actually. Well, because I'm not just getting something that's consistent. I believe it's consistent and it corresponds to reality. Given that my foundation or starting point for the argument is actual experience itself,
You
that I
believe it?
experience myself as having consciousness, and that consciousness is directed towards objects. This is something that I just take for certain, and I
It
believe that's just true.
corresponds. It corresponds with reality. Can you give us an example of that? Of something in your
Okay, so
system that corresponds with reality?
all I have to do for the first premise is say, I think a thought, I think the tree outside. I have a unified consciousness, an ego, a stable sense of identity that persists throughout time, that thinks and understands external objects as unities, like a tree. That's it. That's the starting point.
Okay. I think there are probably many more other systems that would have something similar to that in there. I think, therefore I am. I think thinking is a thing. Do you have another one you can give us that would kind of like isolate, like filter out those other ones and make yours more probable to be true?
Well, I believe if you take my argument to its logical conclusion, you have to get something like the one. I believe that theirs is not going to go down the route that I am. I'm basically
Oh,
saying,
I know.
I take that.
Yeah, I'm
Well, I
sorry
was
to
going to say, I
interrupt.
take that
Go ahead.
experience. I was going to say, I start with that experience, but I try to understand deeper and deeper within that experience as
Yeah.
to what reality is. So I'm
Yeah.
going to basically believe in some way they're not understanding that experience the way that it should be understood. That's it.
Okay, but in the form of an argument, like with premises, this first premise
Yes.
that I think that's going to be the premise for a lot of other worldviews. And
Yes.
my question was, what's something else that you can add to it that would eliminate those other false worldviews and more highly show that yours is true? Is what I'm asking.
Okay, as I proceed down that argument, the next step is to show that these phenomenological unities are metaphysical ones, which basically means that these objects are actual unities. Once I do that, I understand them as accidental unities, which means they have parts. So my consciousness is just not a simple entity. There's one thought after another. There's discrete thoughts. The objects I perceive also in some way have parts in as well. And then upon reflection on that, I understand accidental unities have to have a causal or ordering principle that relates the parts together. I then understand that as part of an essentially ordered causal series, which means that it has to have a first member, and the first member has to be something that's an essential unity, metaphysically simple, meaning it has no parts, because if it would have parts, something would have to unite or relate those parts together. Therefore, any experience of unity is going to require this essential unity or this one to explain it. That'd be
Right.
it.
Okay, so I'm sorry that was way too much for me to write down and process all the way through. But I guess just that's I'll accept what you just said is a genuinely held belief. It's a very long verbose one, and like I said, I wasn't able to absorb the whole thing because it's too much all at once. I have to actually sit down and like look at it for probably a while in order to really fully appreciate it. But I'll just cut to the chase on that one. How do you verify that to be true? Or if you can't verify it, how would you falsify it? Like if that premise turns out was false, is there a way, do you have a method to know whether that premise was actually false?
I believe that it is the burden of the person on the other end to provide the defeaters to my premises. So once I hit what I consider to be the threshold of sufficiency, which basically this is the way that I processed it. I would think of it like when I'm basically saying something to the effect of, if experience, then the one. Now, the premises are just the steps that go from that point to that point. They're just, instead of going from A to H, it goes from A to B to C to D to E to E to F to G to H. And then from within A to B, I'm going to have reasons. And so all I have to do is within my mind, if I feel I'm hitting what I'm calling the threshold of sufficiency, which means there's a set of reasons that makes it so that given experience, you're going to understand them as unified objects and unified consciousness. It's just in my mind that sort of gels or links together. So my goal is to get these, let's just say, constituent aspects of that kind of original sort of understanding together, and to have them in my mind link in some way. So whereas I do that mental link, I'm like, okay, why, if I have this experience, is there going to be something like the one? Well, I'm going to break it down into steps. I'm going to understand the phenomenological unity, then to the metaphysical one, then it to being accidental, then to having a causal principle, then to being essentially ordered, then to having a first principle, which is an essential unity. So, and then I'm going to look in those, and I'm going to just see until the point when they just sort of gel together in my mind, that one step goes to the other. That's what I believe is sufficient for me.
I'll ask one more question and I'll pass it back to Pierce. Sorry for taking over, Pierce. I'll give it back to you in a second.
That's okay. No worries.
So let's say I had a similar system and a similar argument, and I have a big premise that has like stuff that's in the metaphysical and is talking about unity and entities and the one and such, but it's different than yours. It's dealing with like a metaphysical stuff. Can I just throw that out there and then say, okay, it's there. It's now up to you to defeat it, but it's at odds with yours. Like, we have a word for that when it comes to argumentation. I don't want to like throw it out there because I don't want to be confrontational, but it's shifting the burden of proof is basically saying, I said something regarding the metaphysical and I expect you to disprove it. And until then, I assert that it's true. And that was my question to you originally was, sure, if you can give me falsification criterion, just one, just give me one falsification criterion for your statement, and then I have the tools that I need to determine whether it's true or false. I could potentially falsify it off of your falsification criterion.
Okay.
So
okay.
Do you have a falsification criterion for that long premise you just gave us?
Okay. So I'll be honest, to show that I'm kind of open-minded about this. I think there's a possible refutation of my argument. It would be going from the phenomenological unity to a metaphysical one. So if someone was to provide a possible Kantian type argument that shows, well, just because you're experiencing yourself as a unity and these objects as unities, how do you know that matches up to reality? And that's why kind of an important thing in this argument for me is, that's, I think Plotinus actually prefigures Kant deals with this a bit, whether unity is prior to thought or thought is prior to unity. So it would be, in a sense, if someone provides something insightful to me that's like, okay, yeah, you know what? That's a good point. You've provided good reasons against this. And so I do think shifting the burden of proof is valid in certain points, because at some point I have to have my position going from, and I'll use this term, guilty until proven innocent, until innocent until proven guilty. At some point I have to basically say, look, okay, yeah, I've given enough reasons to support as to why, if A, then B. I've given the connections from A to B. You have to provide the defeater. And let me give an analogy. If I basically make a statement, if the sphere is more than 1,000 miles in diameter, then it's not made of gold. In that, there's the presupposition of the scarcity of gold. And so the question is, when can someone make that statement and assert it to be true? Well, if the sphere is more than 1,000 miles in diameter, it's not made of gold, because of their background knowledge about the scarcity of gold. At some point, you believe you've hit, as I said, what's called the threshold of sufficiency. You've given a sufficient set of reasons as to why you believe that premise is justified, and shifting the burden of proof, I think, is actually justified in that setting.
Can we falsify anything that's described in the metaphysical?
Well, falsification deals with science, so you can't really falsify it. You can then...
Falsification is a part of science, yes. It's an integral part of science, but it's not limited to just science.
Well, I would say what you would call in that is more the Socratic method, or reductio ad absurdum. So you can reduce someone's position to an absurdity. You can defeat their position. That would be it. Like, I can give you an example. Like, I'm sure you've heard from Christians before their transcendental argument, if knowledge and experience, then God, knowledge and experience, therefore God.
Okay.
Okay, so what you could do is you could say, well, hold on a minute. That I do think you're justified in saying, I just don't see it. I don't see why knowledge and experience would require God. You need something to gel that together. And you could give like an opposite thing. You could tell the Christian, well, wait a minute, all I need to have knowledge and experience is I need objects to be extended from me in space, having temporal duration, and certain concepts to make sense out of that. Like if I say that my cup is yellow, all I need to have is spatial extension, temporal duration, the concept of unity, one object, the concept of substance persists throughout time, the cup, and then yellow is a category that affirms it. So I could sit there and say, this is what's necessary for experience. Where is God in that? That's providing a defeater. So you could do a similar thing for mind, where you could say, well, Blonde Thunder, I disagree with your phenomenology, and here, let me show you where you're wrong. So that's my point. At some time, I think you need to provide either an undercutter or rebuttal defeater, and not just say a no reason defeater anymore.
Would it be possible for me to come up with a premise like you have that's false, but nobody's able to find a defeater for it?
I guess the question is, I might consider that a no reason defeater. Are you talking about an unfalsifiable claim?
I'm just going by your criterion, because I'm asking, okay, how do you falsify your premises and your argument? And you said, well, you'd have to provide a defeater. And is it possible to provide, like, for instance, let's say I were to flip the script on you and say, I have this premise, and it's up to you to find a defeater for it. And let's say nobody can find a defeater for it. You're unable to, and anybody else who hears about it is unable to. Does that make the proposition true, or is it just simply unfalsifiable?
Well, I think if it's unfalsifiable in that sense, one could argue it having a no reason defeater. But if it has a reason, and the reason's been given and it hasn't been defeated, I think it makes it prima facie justified. Not ultima facie justified, but prima facie justified.
But in my scenario, though, my premise is actually false in reality, but nobody can defeat it and nobody can falsify it. Like, at that point, if we can't verify it's true and we can't falsify it, what use is it to us in an argument or a conversation?
Well, I would probably say in that sense, I would accuse you of having a no reason defeater, because I would say that you don't have a reason to believe it then. I would say that if you're just going to make a wild assertion of some sort that can't be falsified, like, for example, I'm going to say that there are, to use a Tangelus example, flying potatoes on Mars, and this is just what I assert. And what's going to happen is I can't give a rebuttal or undercutter. I'm going to say, well, Tangela, you need to give a reason for that. You're going to need empirical observation. So I'm going to say that he has a no reason defeater. He hasn't provided a reason as to why I should believe that. So that'd probably be it. The example you gave, I would probably accuse of a no reason defeater.
Okay, Pierce, go ahead. Take over.
All right. So I've been formulating a question in my mind this whole time, and today David actually helped me word it. He didn't know he was helping me, but he did in the chat. And my question is this: how does this belief affect your life aside from philosophical grounding?
I think it gives substance to my existential outlook. That would be the best way to put it. That's all it is. So the way that I look at philosophy is more how it's understood in Pierdo's What is Ancient Philosophy. The fundamental is, I think he uses the term existential option, which I kind of found interesting. It's basically how you understand and live the world in a meaningful way. And the theoretical discourse is just to support it. So that's all that is. These arguments are to support my existential outlook.
Could someone, including yourself, could they not share this belief and still have a super meaningful, fulfilling life?
Well, sure.
Okay. How do you think they would go about that?
Well, I think they would probably have meaningful, as long as, I think we have to understand meaning. So for a human, they could possibly have the idea that they have certain projects, certain goals. And if they're attaining these goals with the right amount of struggle, that can give them meaning. So we kind of don't want things too easy. We don't want things too hard. So there could be someone who's just has a certain projects or goals in their life, and they're attaining it with the right amount of adversity and overcoming, and that's giving them meaning. Sure.
Okay.
You don't have to have that metaphysics I have for that.
Could that be you, or is that just something that you're really not interested in?
Oh, well, I have that part of my life as well, yeah.
Okay. This is like a cherry on top of the cake, or help me understand.
This would just be the theoretical discourse to support that existential option. That's basically it. That's all it is.
Okay. I think that's about it. All I got for you. Eric, are you gonna have anything more to add?
Yeah, I guess we probably should have started off the conversation with levels of confidence in this, but from 0 to 100, where's your confidence level that your argument for the existence of the one simple entity that everything emanates from, like, what's your confidence level that that argument is both valid and sound, or true?
Well, it's okay. As far as valid is logically valid, 100% confident in that. As far as the soundness is concerned, what haunts me is that sort of Kantian criticism, the possible one, the movement from premise one to premise two, the phenomenological unity to the metaphysical unity. And this is kind of interesting because there's some things that people give responses to me, and I just dismiss them as being kind of just pointless, like Venus in the brute facts argument, the brute facts position when it comes to premise four. Just to me, I'm just 100% confident that that's just a silly objection, and that's nonsense. So why does that come about? I don't know, but I would have to say, as far as no percentage, but premise two is the one that haunts me. Once that one is completely overcome, then yeah, I wouldn't have any problems at all. But I wonder if that's the whole point of cosmological arguments. There's specific objections, as Proust said. There's, I think he called the Glendower, the taxi cab objection. Oh, I forgot the other ones again. But basically, every cosmological argument is going to at least have a Glendower problem to it. And the other ones, like the taxi cab, and I forgot the other ones. I don't have, mine doesn't have any of those. So the problem would be premise two. That's it. So that's really where kind of my weaker confidence is on that premise. But if that premise just somehow hit in my mind to be absolutely certain, I would be absolutely certain of it.
And just to recap what you said before, you would only be able to abandon premise two if somebody else defeats it for you, right?
I'm at attention in that one. That's it. I kind of lean more towards it, but it's in my mind. I mean, I know the kind of positions against it. It's basically this whole Kant versus Plotinus thing. It's whether unity is prior to thought or thought generates unity. If it's the first one, then yeah.
I'm not sure if I came across clearly there. Let me try again. So when I was asking earlier about premise two, I was asking about falsification. Like if premise two turned out to be false, what would be your method to know? And your response was, well, I would need to hear a defeater for it. So you said that you feel most shaky on premise two. So that means that you think that somebody could come along and present you a defeater for it. And that would be the only way for you to abandon premise two. Is that, I'm just putting together what you said before and what you're saying now. Is that the only way that you would get rid of premise two if somebody else defeated it?
If they basically really showed that Kantian objection to be absolutely certain, then yes, I would.
Okay. And you have no other method by which to abandon premise two other than somebody else doing that?
I mean, I could do it myself. I kind of reflect on it. That's where I'm saying that I have the tension. Maybe the other person might be the force to go more towards one versus the other. But I have the premise two is that there's a psychic tension in me. There isn't in any of the other premises at all, and none of the other ones.
So you would have to present a defeater to yourself. That would also be a different premise to defeat the premise that you're analyzing currently.
Yeah, I would have to basically say, as far as premise two, it would have to be something to the effect that these phenomenological unities are not metaphysical unities. They're just things that we experience this in this way. And in a Kantian way, the category of unity, whether in the synthetic unity of a perception or the category of unity, is something that our mind projects, and it's not something that's actually real. If that was done, then yes, that would create a problem for premise two.
Okay. So again, like I said, I'm not a philosopher, so I'm not catching a lot of what you're saying there. I'm just trying to get down to like kind of the core generalities of the conversation and the argument itself, not like the nitty-gritty specifics. But so you have a premise two, it makes truth claims. Somebody else would have to present different truth claims that would make you reject your premise two, or you'd have to present yourself new truth claims to reject premise two. And that's the only two ways you would say, okay, premise two, you're out, and you replace something better.
Well, I would just crush the argument because the argument would need that.
The whole argument.
I would have to just,
okay.
I would probably want to
yeah.
change it to more of a transcendental argument.
Okay,
that would
makes
be
sense.
it.
So if a new premise was presented and that took away premise two out of your argument, you would just completely scrap the whole argument and move on to something else. That's what I just heard.
Yeah, I would probably present it in a transcendental form rather than a cosmological one.
Okay.
Which I'm thinking about doing because that one is a problem.
And then my last question will be, Pierce's step. Oh, there he is. Okay. My last question would be, what? Just guess. Like I know we're dealing with. I'm using probabilities very, very loosely.
Sure.
Obviously.
Yeah, I understand.
What do you think the probability that's happening is? Somebody comes by, or you come by yourself and say, "Oh, I found a better premise," and my entire argument's gone. Like 1 out of 4, 1/2. Just a guess.
You know, as far as that one, I would have to say I side more towards Plotinus than Kant. There's a reasonable chance. I don't know the exact numbers, but I could say it is not just possible. It's the only one that this reasonably could happen. That's
So,
it for that
so you
one.
lean towards it. You don't lean away from the possibility. You lean towards the possibility.
Yeah, that one is possible. Like as I said, the other
Okay.
one, like for example, Venus's objection to premise 4 about brute facts, no chance in that. No chance in me except that's just so laughably absurd to me. I'm just not going to even because it doesn't even explain the causation. Like for example, he's going to sit there and say, well, you can't prove ex nihilo nihil fit, and I'm going to think obviously that's something that's certain. So that's something I'm just not going to take seriously. I'm just going to sit there. To me, I just dismiss that because I think it's just completely ridiculous. That's something that 0% chance for that one.
Okay.
But actually, if what you could get from this is a really good discussion, and I will give you credit, even if you want to say that you are not philosophers. I've had a better discussion with you than I've had with a lot of people as far as philosophy. And when I gave a lot of people the arguments in some of these debate bro servers where these people that claim to like philosophy, none of even got to this point. They were just quibbling over words and asking for just basically that, just really running interference so they can quote unquote win a debate. So we actually got kind of a lot out on this. You should commend yourself for that. So we actually went to what I consider to be the major problem, my argument, the specific premise, and why I don't think the other premises, if someone were was to argue against them, would be convincing for me. This ultimately, just as I said, this boils down that there's just something in my mind. I don't know. I don't know if the other person's lying or they just process things differently, why that person disagrees with a different premise. And to me, I'm like, no, I just, no way, there's no way in hell I can just accept that criticism. It's so absurd and ridiculous. So I think you're dealing with people and there's always going to be an element of subjectivity, and there's going to be some things that give them the aha moment and some things that don't.
All right. Well, thank you for those comments. And that is the goal of Street Epistemology, is non-confrontational. We want to have more of a meta argument around your beliefs and not actually confront people on like the actual premises of their arguments or the philosophy behind it. So yeah, thank you very much, and we appreciate that. And it sounds like if you're walking away from this conversation and you feel good about how it went, and none of us are at each other's throats, I think that's a success. So yeah,
Cool,
thank you, Blonde.
cool. Well, you're
Cool.
welcome. Hey, you have a great day.
You too.
Yeah, you too. All right, we will bring up the next person. Looks like Eric kind of reset the room there, so I'm not even gonna. That's great. Right, I invited. I don't know their name. I'm in streamer mode, so their name is hidden. Starts with a P, and you got a cat in your picture. So if that's you, come up on
Porteal.
stage. Yes,
Porteal.
that person.
Porteal,
right.
come on down. Anyone else watch Price is Right when they were homesick from school? Or am I just Price is Right still on, right?
I think so, right?
Yeah. Drew Carey is the host now, I think.
Right. All right, we're moving on to the next person.
Oh, Porteal says he's trying.
Okay. Well, we will come back to him.
Yeah.
Hello there. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah,
I think, generally speaking, like when we talk about like finding the right religion, it just comes down to the idea that like in whatever religion we're going to look at, right, it's going to be, do the people think that their deity or whatever thing is fair to them once they, especially if the idea is like if they have an afterlife, is the judgment going to be fair? Right. And so, like, for example, the importance of that would be like, I'm going to pick Christianity because I'm more familiar with it. Generally, people, especially atheists or people outside who've been in religion, like they look at the God and they look at their followers and then extrapolate that there are certain things their followers are doing or are, and it points towards their God. And if that's what the God encourages their followers to do, then it would what do you call this? It would lead them to believe that their God is unfair, and they don't want to be any part of it, right? But that's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like,
What-
I am here to say that, like, especially because I come from a Christian background, I would like to say that the God that I believe in is fair.
what is that God?
It's interesting, right? Like, I think the way I would describe my God is like is this being of absolute truth. So like when I bring that up, right, the one that comes to mind in describing it is like there's a passage in the Bible in Revelations. It talks that like essentially the idea is that like there'll come a time in the future wherein like every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that that this is God. It's like the idea that there is like self-evident truth, and that's the example of self-evident truth wherein like once we are confronted with God, we look at and see God, and we just know.
So I'm
But
not
that
sure.
time isn't now.
So if you're saying, I'm not sure if we got that answer that you're trying to convey to us. What's the God that you believe is true? You just dropped a scripture, so I'm imagining it's the Christian God, but correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
the Christian
it's-
God. All right.
Sure. But I'm not. I don't adhere to like the general understanding of how Christians would see God. Like, for example, I don't believe that people go to hell. I believe hell exists, but I just don't think our just, my fair God would like judge anyone to go to hell.
So hell exists, but people don't go there.
Correct.
Do demons and the devil go there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we got a little bit of an idea of what kind of God you believe in. So thank you for explaining that. I think you kind of got into how you kind of started taking us down this path of how you came to that conclusion. You said something about self-evident truth, and that's where my understanding kind of dropped off. What do you mean by self-evident truth?
So I'm gonna put that aside because like that goes with the definition of God. Like if you're talking about my
Oh.
path, and right, like because I believe that God is the embodiment of objective truth, right? But I believe we don't have access to objective truth, and all we
Gotcha.
have, honestly, being is just like it's subjective truth. But it's like if we take all our subjective truths, we get very close to the objective truth.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So that kind of goes along with the definition. So how did you come to your conclusion that this God exists and is true?
It all comes down to experiences, right? Like at some point, I made a decision that like the observations I have, like experiences I have, there are things where it's just like natural experiences, and there are some things which I just can't, I can't put my finger on it, and I'll just call, and then either being intellectually lazy or whatever. But I do believe that God speaks, and He speaks through those experiences, and it's very
Okay.
subjective to me, and it gets really weird. Like I know it's true, and if I only was the only person to exist in the world, that will be true. But like I live with everybody else, and it's really weird when like God speaks to me and it's a message for me, and I tell other people like God speaks to me, right? Like I don't really have a way to just like, here's God's message. It gets really weird.
Can you
What I
give us-
can do is that what I can do is relate my experience and then like see if it resonates with somebody else.
Can you give us an example of your best experience that follows this this line of reasoning? An experience where God spoke through that experience to you. Like, do you have one that just kind of stands out? Like, this is my crown jewel of experiences that really I look at and I marvel at.
I have like really bad memory, but I do remember a lot of feelings when it comes to like when you go to worship, right? We go to, when you go to church, you meet other believers, and then you worship, and then it's like there's a vibe, right? It could be the music, whatever, but like there's a shared experience there, and it like resonates with me. I don't know.
I used to experience that too back when I was a Christian, but chances are I was in a different denomination than you did. So I felt
Probably.
those same things too. Do you think like members of other religions, like Muslims when they go to pray, or Jews when they read the Torah and they're getting together and they're worshiping, do you think they get similar experiences and similar feelings to what you're describing?
Absolutely. Yes.
Right.
There was
So-
one of those. There's one of those folks, one of those religions that has a radically different conclusion than you do. Like, for example, I brought up Hinduism before. There was Hindus who had those feelings, they had these experiences, and they came to the conclusion that the Hindu gods are real because of those reasons. Would that mean the Hindu gods are real?
So here's the thing, right? I remember when I mentioned the idea like there's an objective truth, and then
Yeah.
we all have these subjective feelings, and if we like combine our knowledge, or sorry, our experiences, we get very close to it, but not quite there, right? Like, unless objective truth is there and we absolutely know, like, we have the self-evident truth show up, we're not there yet, right? So even if, for example, the Hindus, they would have similar experiences to us, and I believe God is talking to them, right? Like this embodiment of the objective truth is talking to them individually, and they have their own, like, their consensus, right?
Okay.
I believe
Yeah.
it's like, I don't think it's necessarily invalid, right? Compared to like when I compare it to the Christian God. It's just that, like, for me, when the framework I use to describe my God is like, it's the one I understand.
Okay.
So the process that you described, that the more people that have these experiences, the more it indicates that there's truth behind this. Let's say we have two religions that have completely contradictory ideas of God. Like, it's a direct, mutually exclusive idea that a God exists, or which God exists. The religion A says this God A exists. Religion B says God B exists, and God A and B both have attributes that are contradictory to each other. They both, you can't reconcile it. For instance, like, it's just a straight, God A has this attribute, God B does not have that attribute. And internally, you see that process occurring. You got people having personal experiences of these two gods, congealing around them. According to your reasoning, both are increasing their confidence that this God is the real God. But then all of a sudden, these two groups try to come together and use that same process. What happens at that point?
So there's a few things that happen, right? There's the idea of communication. So it's really hard to explain, like, really personal things that God talks to us. And so the best we can do is communicate. So in the beginning, we can use language, but at some point, right, like, if there's absolutely no way to, like, resolve conflicts, we use violence. And I think God allows for that.
So you would resolve it with violence?
I mean, if
I'm
you
so- I'm
can't
sorry, I
talk it
just-
out,
Go
yeah,
ahead,
if
go
you
ahead.
can't talk it out, like, violence is the bottom, like, way we communicate.
Is the victor in a violent event always the one that has truth on their side? I'm confused here.
I don't think so, right?
So,
but I do believe that
potentially,
if
I'm sorry. I just want to kind of really drill into this, because this is kind of a fascinating method for coming to determine which God is true. If we have my scenario, the two groups coming together, they can't reconcile things with words, so things turn violent, and one group wins. Does that indicate that their God is the real God?
it would seem so, right? But
Is it
once again,
possible?
right?
Is it possible for a group to win, but their proclamations of the God be false?
Absolutely.
Okay. Forgive me. I
Like,
just heard you
you-
in two sentences. I heard a contradiction there, so I'd like to see what we can do about
So-
that.
So, well, here's the thing, right? If we just simply talk about natural processes, then yes. But then we have to allow for, like, a God to actually intervene, right? So, for example, we can have those two things be true, right? So, on the one hand, right, we look at the Old Testament, for example. God used external forces to punish the Israelites. Right? So, if they believe in one true God, and, like, they believe in the true God, and then somebody came in and, like, wrecked them. And that was the idea for punishment, right? So were they necessarily the ones who would be, like, more moral or just or whatever? That's not necessarily true. But, like, also on the other hand, right, if God is on your side, who can be against you, kind of? So the real question is then, like, once again, right, like, where is God at? Like, how do we know where God is at? And I don't think we really ever know that. We can only kind of, like, get together and see resonate and like vibe, lack of a better term. And we communicate, right? We, generally speaking, at least from my understanding, we don't want to go to the level of violence. That's why we talk about these things. That's why we develop logic. We develop all these constructs. We develop philosophies. We develop ideas. But at the very, very end of everything, right? It's like, what do we experience? What is our experience with God? Do we think that at the end of our days, will this God be fair to me?
Okay. Well, I'll pass it back over to Pierce then. I think Pierce has a line of questions he wants to go through.
Yeah. So before, when we were talking about Christianity and Hinduism, and we were talking about both of them and trying to figure out which one might be true. But you said that we kind of only have access to subjective truth, so we can't really know which one might be true. That's what you were saying, right?
Correct.
Okay. If we can't know which one is true, whether Christianity is true, whether Hinduism is true, why do we pick a side? Why don't we just say, well, I don't know if Hinduism is true. I don't know if Christianity is true. I think a God exists, but I don't know which one.
Because like, remember that I talked about experiences. We have different layers of experiences. And so, like, for example, it'd be really, really weird and really difficult in your life if you became a Christian and you were like, in a predominantly Muslim area, or if you're a Muslim in a predominantly Christian area, right? I mean, it does happen, and then there are difficulties, and people, go through it. But generally speaking,
Okay.
like, there is like an advantage to taking a side, especially like, like, for example, if you're a Christian and then you do the Christian things and you're part of the culture, you have potlucks, for example, and you're part of this community, and you can continue this conversation, right? So there is an advantage to like picking a side, right? It
Yeah.
allows you access to things that you would not have normally.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, totally. Like, it brings a sense of community. Absolutely. With regards to that,
religion has a lot of utility, basically. Go ahead, Pierce.
Correct.
Sorry.
Yeah, totally. Does that relate to whether or not it's true or false?
Like I said, like it's there's the idea of subjectivity, right? Like it's at the end of the at the end of the day, right? Like if you are going to be doing things and people are telling you like, oh, there's this God, and you like experience the followers, and they're not living up to the ideals of the religion or the God, right? That would cause problems in like how you view the God, and then that would also affect like how you would think like, oh, is this God fair, right? And when you reach that point of like, like crisis, I guess, you kind of have to make a decision: do I stay with this religion or do I find something else?
Hmm. Okay, I think I hear what you're saying.
Because you're talking about the idea of truth, right? Like, because we are
Yeah.
able to like evaluate truth for ourselves, and like, how do we like determine what is true? Like, look out there and be like, okay, that this God's saying that he's fair, but I look at the followers and they're not. How can a God, how can in this religion they say their God is fair, spawn like, followers who are not? Something's not right here, right?
Okay. Is that sounds like something that's really important to you? I think you've repeated it quite a few times now.
Correct.
Okay. Why is this important?
Because I think a lot of people fall away from the religion, not necessarily because they logic out that there's the problem, the logical problem of evil or like some other philosophy. It's like they look at the followers and see who they can trust, right? That's why it's a very big thing. Like, for example, for Catholics to cover up like pedophilia in their ranks, for example, or like for we have clergy abuse. It's a very very big deal.
Yeah, that might give a bad look, right? Yeah, you might not be able to trust those people. I hear what you're saying.
because it's very
Um,
it's that's how we, for example, know what is true, right? We as scientists or as engineers, we get the latest from like people we trust. Like, oh, there's going to be this technology. It's going to be the it, right? And we hear
would
this
it
from people we trust.
would it be a good idea? Like, I guess I'm just asking you personally, just your opinion on this. Should someone join a religion just because they trust their followers, or would it be more important to join the religion because the religious beliefs of that religion are true?
Ooh, I would always go with people. People who are
Really?
like, yes,
Do you value trusting people more than you value believing in things that are true?
yes.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting.
Do you
Why is
do you
that the
value
case?
do you value comfort in life in general over being correct about truth propositions?
Um, that's a tough question, right? It's hmm, because it's the idea is that like we create our society based upon like truth, right? There's certain things we can, and when I talk about like the idea of truth, it's about like the predictability, right? When I say like something like tomorrow is going to rain, and tomorrow doesn't rain, that affects trust in me, right? But like we're talking about something that's true, we can verify, we can observe, we can test. So that's really difficult for me to like to answer because like if somebody is constantly like, I really like this guy, he's really awesome, but he's always wrong, that's kind of a problem.
If you don't mind, I'd like to kind of explore this a little bit deeper. So,
Sure.
sounds like you really want to be able to trust people and really maybe build a connection with them. Am I hearing that correctly? Is that about what you want to do? You really want to trust and have this connection?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so you have this connection, and I would imagine it probably invokes some positive feelings. What kind of feelings do you get when you connect with these people and you have this mutual trust?
It's interesting, right? Because it's like, at least for me speaking, right? Like there's a status quo because I don't trust a lot of people. There's a lot, I don't know a lot of things about people, so like, there's always the guard up, and it's
Mm,
like, there's a sense of paranoia. But when there's people I can trust, then that
yeah,
stuff comes down. I can be right. Like
yeah. When you
I don't know how to
interact with
describe that feeling.
interact with these people, when you have this trust going, when when you're hanging out with someone you really trust, what goes on in your heart?
It's like the idea that I can be weird. Does that make sense?
I didn't quite
Like
catch
there are
that
certain.
word.
It's like the idea they can be weird, like queer. Like I can be weird, different than the norm.
Okay,
And
okay.
then and my differences from the norm won't necessarily lead to violence.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so you have this desire for connection. You have some overall positive feelings, um, and you've kind of come to you're meeting this by. It sounds like is religion is the religion part of the way you're kind of gaining this connection?
Yes,
Okay,
because it provides
good,
a
great.
framework, right? Like it's like this idea that if we didn't know anything about anybody about somebody else ever, then we have to like to figure out first if they're a threat. Do they believe in murder is bad? Do they believe But then, for example, if we have like a common religion, then we can kind of
Hmm.
skip over a lot of those things and go like, oh, believe in the Ten
Mm,
Commandments. I don't have to worry. At least prima facie, you're not gonna try to murder me off bat, right? Like at least I believe that,
okay.
and it like speeds up that process in which we can put down our guards.
Is there so this is one strategy to kind of get that fulfilled for you. Is there any alternative strategies that might work the same way or be just as effective?
Yes,
Okay, what might
but
one be?
this one is like a dream, though, right? It's like the idea of the perfect conflict resolution system. So what do I mean by saying when I conflict resolution system, right? It's the idea that like if we are ever in any conflict, we'd use this system and we'd come into agreement. So, for example, like if in the current world we have, usually if we use violence as a conflict resolution system, you disagree with me, I kill you, there is no more conflict, right?
Okay.
Not exactly the best conflict resolution system. There's other ways, right? Like, for example, we look at the court system. Two people, like, have a dispute, they go to a judge, the judge uses the law, and then go, okay, well, here's what's fair. And everybody's like, okay, well, yeah, sure, I don't like the outcome, but,
You mind if I rephrase my question real quick? I think I portrayed it in a way that isn't the way I wanted to. I probably asked the wrong question here. So I mean, for you personally to have this connection, so you can have these positive feelings as a result of having that fulfilled. Is there another strategy you can do to get this need fulfilled?
Probably.
Okay.
Because, like, for example, I have coworkers, and then, for example, I meet friends through hobbies, right? We have certain commonalities that we can speed through the point where we can, like, lower our guards.
Gotcha. Why haven't you concentrated on that strategy? And why are we talking about the religion and how that about that strategy? Why not abandon that strategy and go with this other one?
Because I can't work at all the jobs. I can't, like, meet. There's only so many hobbies I can pick up, right? On the other hand, like, when we talk about the idea of religion, there's already structure. There's already like incentives to join, and it's like most religions are voluntary. So you go to a potluck, church potluck. I'm not going there because most people aren't there because they're obligated to be there. They're generally speaking, want to be there. Not like, for example, work.
Okay.
And it's also established and it exists outside of work and like play.
I'm not sure what your interests are, and I'm not going to ask. Maybe that's personal. Who knows? But let's just say you like table tennis and you join like a table tennis league. Would that be a feasible strategy to accomplish what you want?
Not to replace religion. That would be one avenue, right? Because it would also mean, because generally speaking, we talk about like table tennis, that's like a demographic, and then like religion, that's also demographic.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and then not only that, right? We talk about religion. There's also like, how should I put this? It's like the idea that like we're like a heritage, been around a long time. I don't know how to put it exactly, but like there's like stories around the religion versus like stories around the tennis table.
Culture,
Yeah,
culture.
Okay. The culture is something that you seem to enjoy?
Not all cultures, right? Because
I mean the one that you're a part of.
Yes.
Okay. So if you had going back to my example earlier, you have two religions that have contradictory beliefs against each other. They both can't be true. Would you how highly would you value the culture of the religion compared to like more objective evaluations of like true claims and stuff? Like how much would the culture factor into your decision which religion to choose?
I would say it factors pretty highly.
Pretty highly. Okay.
Right.
So let's say, for instance, you really liked ping pong. I'm not saying you do, but let's say you did. You really, really like ping pong. Okay. Religion A has a ping pong table in the corner of their church. Religion B has a whole ping pong league that they do every year. Would that be criteria you would use to choose which religion to adopt?
I mean, like everything else is the same, and that's the only difference.
They have contradictory beliefs, but all
All
else
right.
being equal, sure.
Yeah, I would probably go with the ping pong league.
Go to the ping pong league. Okay. Let's say you also really like cooking, and Church A has a cooking school with like their own kitchen. They really value cooking, but they don't value ping pong. They only have that one ping pong table over in the corner. And then Church B with the ping pong league, they don't care at all about cooking. They have like a microwave in the kitchen. And that's it. Would that suddenly equalize your evaluation? And
depends on, like-
now both religions are now the same like percentage of adoption.
Yes, I mean it would change, right? Because depending on where my interests lie, that would change. Yes.
Okay. And then final question. Let's say we have a religion C, another God, another belief. And let's say hypothetically that religion C, that's actually the true religion. And they have neither ping pong nor cooking. In fact, they say we don't do those activities in our church. We worship the true God instead.
Okay. And
How would
do I
that
know this is-
evaluate into your system there?
Okay, so the question I have is that, like, in that hypothetical, right? Do I
Mhm.
know that's a true religion?
Well, I don't want to say you know the true religion. I just they
I mean, like,
happen to
'cause
be
that's important.
well, no. So my let me rephrase it, just so I'm clear. We're talking about epistemology, how you come to know whether things are true or false, how your process, your methodology, how you come to know these things. So in the case of these three religions, in this hypothetical, the third religion, religion C, has the truth. You don't know it, but they have the truth. But they don't have the
Okay.
cultural things you value. Do you have any other method by which, or rather, if you're using, basically what I'm getting at is if you're using culture as your evaluation criteria, in that hypothetical, you're going to miss out on the true religion because you are looking at the culture instead of the objective facts and the epistemology behind it.
Sure, right.
Like-
So I this is where I would lean on, the supernatural, right? Because if it was just left to my own devices, I would definitely go for the cultural. But I do believe there's a God that's active, and God does what God does, right? I can only choose and do things based upon like the things I'm able to like that's given to me. So if that knowledge of the the
Mhm.
true religion wasn't given to me, then I can only act upon what I have. And I
Right.
believe eventually God will, if God
And-
wants me in the true religion, he'll figure it out.
And you mentioned that earlier that you were relying on self-evident truth experiences and God speaking through experiences, right?
Correct.
So let's say we pluck one person out of each of those churches, the ping pong church, the cooking church, and the neither church, but the church that happens to be true. And they all say, yeah, we've all had experiences. I felt in my heart at one point in my life that, it was a self-evident truth. I looked at the material and I just believed it spoke to me. We sang a song in our church and it just resonated with me. Let's say I'm now Alan the alien and I'm listening to this and I see these three people. They're all telling me that they all had these experiences. What extra thing can we give to Alan to help him decide which of these three religions is true?
So remember we talked about I think it was Pierce talked about the idea of the violence of like language, and I think that what we're trying to do here is the violence of language. We're trying to make somebody choose, and I think that's not fair to Alan. We should kind of like, here's what we think, here's what we believe. Like, what is God telling you?
So
Is it
go ahead, Pierce.
is it I mean, I wouldn't ever want to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't believe. That's not what I do here. But what I'd like to ask you is, should people value believing in things that are true, like having the truth?
So my count. Well, I don't know if like there's a question I have to ask first, right? Like, what is the
What?
utility of this truth?
Yeah, I mean, it probably has a lot. Like, I would imagine if you subscribe to a particular religion, I mean, maybe you could end up harming someone, and
right? Because like there's,
Yeah.
I believe in this idea of subjective truth, right? And then so there's different things people believe, and like if it's leading them to, if they're able to use it, right, and use it for good, for that it helps enrich their life, and be a source of like, um, you know, productivity, then yeah, it's good. But if it's like some other truth in which it's like to use like a sword used to slice people, then I am less okay with that other truth
Hmm.
versus the other one.
Okay. So if what I think I heard was if the religion is kind of not causing any problems for other people, if it's more of a thing about you rather than a thing about others, then that's kind of, it doesn't really matter what that person might believe. But if it
Correct. It's like
were, yeah,
we have an example of that, like, right? We have the Amish. They kind of keep themselves. They believe whatever they believe. That's fine.
okay,
On the other hand, we have something like the Westboro Baptist Church, right? Who use their truth to like go out and I forget exactly what they do, but I remember them picketing outside veterans' funerals, making
yeah,
people,
yeah,
generally not a
yeah,
positive.
gotcha. Even with your example of the Amish, could there potentially be any drawbacks? Like, could there be anything that, because they have these beliefs, deeply held beliefs, that people could be not as well off in their community?
Yeah, that's the trade-off
Okay.
we have in real life, right? I
Like,
don't know what to say.
because of that, is there value in believing things that are true and not believing in things that are false?
You got to give me a little more there.
Yeah.
I
So,
mean,
like,
on its face value, yes, right. It's better to be able to have truth because then you can, the idea is that you can, predict things in the future. So that's always has utility. And if you believe in things
yeah,
that are false, right, like sure you may have a placebo effect, but generally speaking, like in the long run, it's not,
Like for
but
example,
like the context matters.
for example, let's say you have like a cup of water in front of you and a cup of Coca-Cola in front of you. And let's say you don't know it, but the cup of Coca-Cola is poisoned. It's got deadly poison inside of it. Um, you're standing there and you're like, you know what? I know one of these is poison, but I don't know which one it's going to be. Would you use your criteria of preference in that decision-making
I mean,
process? Like
so it's going
basically
to sound
saying, well,
really
I value Coca-Cola. It tastes better than water. I'm going to drink the Coca-Cola. Would you use that criteria there?
right, but then there's a different valuation method, right? Like it's not about preference at this point. It's like how much do I value my life,
Well,
right?
in
Because
the context of religion, maybe both religions or maybe one of the religions is saying, no, if you don't believe here, you're going to go to hell. You're going to suffer. So in that context, you're going to have dire consequences for choosing wrong. Would
absolutely,
your criteria preference still play as heavily there
yeah.
as it does with the poison?
Yes, right. Well, so it's different, right? And we talk about like the poison because the idea is that like the effect is immediate and like I don't have to choose those drinks, right? Same way I don't have to choose that religion.
You're
But
dying of
like
thirst. You have to choose.
I knew you were going to bring that. I knew you were going to bring that up, right? Like, so like it also applies to the religion, right? Like you don't necessarily have to. It's like how would you value like how much value would you place on that truth of like if you die and then like don't you think the right things that you're going to go to hell? Like how much value do you put in that? Right. The same way, for example, you look at these two things, right? Like if I don't know either, where the poison is, like, and I have to choose one, and my only criteria is like my preference, then it is what it is, right? Because I don't have any other way to like weigh the the water or the Coke because I don't know where the poison is.
I
Same
think I
thing with like
asked this earlier, but I really want to ask it again. So now I just forgot what the heck I was going to say. What is wrong with me?
it's all right. I'm pretty sure you'll come back to it, right? Like, so I can talk more about like the idea, like for example, there's a religion that says like,
Oh,
look, you're going to go to hell, kind of thing, right? Like, what do I
I
believe?
remembered
Right?
it.
Do I? Go ahead.
I remembered what I was going to ask. So you said like with your talking, you seem to be like, well, we don't know for sure which one is true. And if we don't know, I might as well go with my preference because that's what I prefer.
Yes.
I guess what's the matter? Why not just throw your hands up and say, I'm not really sure. I'm not positive which one is true. I'm not gonna really commit to one or the other. Why not take that strategy?
That's perfectly fine for everybody else, right? Because like, that's not my experience, right? That could be somebody else's experience, and I think it's perfectly valid because we are not like a static creatures. We can change our mind in the future, and there is a God that's, if we believe there is a God, like, does what God wants, and like there's a plan and everything, God will do what God does. But we have to make the choices based upon like what we have, whatever's given to us. We just do the best we can, is what I believe.
Like what I'm hearing is like this internal personal experience, or maybe external, I don't know, this experience that you've had. In one
Right.
sense, you're saying like I can't know for sure. Like I'm not really certain. But then on the other hand, you're like, well, I have this personal experience, so I'm going in this direction. I'm just left a little confused. Is it reliable? Is it not reliable?
It's as reliable as you want to make it reliable, right? Because like I remember I mentioned earlier that like I believe that God talks to me and God guides my direction. And it's not always like, going to be, it's not going to always fit the pattern of everybody else. I'm not going to be normal per se because reasons with God, right? And so like God reveals things to me. I make decisions based on whatever's given to me. And like I believe, remember I mentioned earlier before, like the first thing, like I believe God will treat me fairly once I finally get to the judgment. And so that's how I like would decide or do things in this world.
So you're basically saying that no matter what religion you choose, you think God would be fair with you as long as you chose honestly?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it's possible for a God to not be fair with you?
Well, at that point, it doesn't matter then.
Well, maybe the God, I mean, just hypothetically, let's say a God exists. He's not interested in being fair with you unless you choose his religion, then he'll be, he'll treat you right. Do you think that could be a scenario?
Yeah, it could be.
Right.
Right. But like, it comes down to once again, like, what are my experiences with God? Like, it could be possible that like this God that I'm following, right? He has these secret rules and he's hiding them from me. And at the very end, he'll be like, surprise. But that's at the end. I don't have any evidence for that like scenario. But so far, like in my walk with God, he's shown to be fair and good. It might not always be true with other people. They have different experiences, and like that's fine. And I believe that like as long as we're honest with God, God will always be honest with us.
All right. Anything else, Pierce, you want to ask him about?
No, I say we wrap up. I guess one last question. How do you think this conversation went?
I like it. It's very constructive. Like I like the idea that we're bouncing ideas off. We're unpacking things. It's it's we vibe is what I'd probably say. We vibe.
All right, fair enough. I'll take it. All right. With that being said, thanks for coming on up. We'll move on to the next person. We'll try this person again whose button didn't work. See if your button works this time. If not, we will bring the next person up. Okay, it might not be working. Give you a sec. Okay, I will give you both 5 seconds here. Should be enough time to find the button and click it, hopefully. I'm gonna make the assumption that it's not working out, unfortunately. Sorry about that. All right. Luke, let's bring you up. I've talked to Luke so many times, but
Hey,
why not
Hi, Luke.
one more time? Hey, Luke.
how you doing?
What's on your mind today?
Christianity is a true religion?
All right.
Catholicism? Or
Okay.
for the claim for today. And yeah, that would be it.
Why
That's
do you
the
think
truth.
why do you think religion is true religion?
For a similar reason than my coffee cup is in front of me. So there are reasons why I believe that there is a coffee cup in front of me. Usually it's my senses. This is the thing I use. Oh, sorry, you don't see me well. There you go. Usually it's my senses that I use and my knowledge from my parents and those kind of things that I use to say there is a coffee cup or to claim that there is a coffee cup in front of me. I compare this evidence, the one my senses gave me, to the other evidence that I have, other things that I know are true or I believe are true. So when it comes to religion is the thing that allows you to differentiate. Sorry, I'm French. Sometimes my English is wrong. Differentiate between right and wrong. Know what is good or bad. And yeah, there are claims. Each religion have claims about things that are good, bad, and there are consequences for the good thing and the bad things based on those religions. So you have tools that are available to measure if a religion is true or bad based on their claims, on true or false, sorry, based on their claims on what is good or bad. Catholicism is the one that has the most. Therefore, it's the true one.
Okay. So going back to your criteria for your comparison of the coffee cup versus your Christian beliefs. So yeah, I mean, like you likened it. It's okay. I know it the same way I know my coffee cup's in front of me. So with a coffee cup, I have a soda can or water can, so I can pick it up.
That's okay.
I can touch it. Yeah, I can pick it up. I can touch
Yeah.
it. I can show it to others. I can show you I'm drinking Waterloo, cherry lemonade, or limeade rather. I can show this to others. I can replicate this evidence. I can, it's tangible and something that we can use in order to make objective evaluations of the world. Is there anything within your religion, your Christianity, where you can actually treat it like your coffee mug and show it to others and do things? Because
everything that they claim is good.
So how would you show that to others? Is what I'm getting at.
Okay, well, when I say you look good today,
I don't follow. Because let me rephrase my question. So you compared evaluation and verification of your religion as true to the evaluation and verification that the coffee cup on your desk is real, that it exists. I'm asking what methodology with a coffee cup do you use with your religion? And one thing I chose was replication, or I can show this numerous times, numerous people, and it convince people that this thing actually exists. How do you do that with your religion, or can you do that with your religion? Hold on, did I lose audio?
Oop, my bad. I had myself muted. That's my fault.
Yeah. I see Luck is gone and Portil's now here. What happened?
Yeah, I think he lost connection. I re-invited him back upstage, but he's unable to get up. Well, let's try one more time. Otherwise,
there we go.
Okay. Luke,
so yeah, sorry, my computer froze.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to hear you anymore. And,
no worries.
I was frozen too.
Did you get my question?
So I had to restart Discord. No, go ahead. So no, I don't have your last question. Sorry.
Okay. So I asked you, why do you think Christianity is the true religion? And you said, well, I know it the same way I know that my coffee cup on my desk is real. And then I went into how, I have a can and I can do things with the can to use it to verify that the can is actually real and
Heard that one.
the
Mhm.
premise that the can exists is true. How do you do that? Like, how do you take that process as you describe with the coffee cup and apply it to your religion? Like, how could you show others using the same processes as the coffee cup?
So let's pick an example. Something I would tell you that is true. I wouldn't lie, which is one of the things that religion gives me as a true proposition. They say you shouldn't lie, and I tell you you look good today. I will tell you that there are consequences to the truth, not to lying, right? Which is a good thing. They say this is a good thing to do, and there are consequences to the good thing. You say this is a coffee cup because there are things that comes out when you look at it. There's a form for it. So there are good things that comes when you do good things, and there are bad things that happens when you do bad things. So I'll tell you look good. There will be a smile, at least, I hope, whenever I tell you that you look good, and those kind of things. So that's what happens. You observe the consequences of the claim that you hold.
So Christianity compels people to do good things within the Christian religion, and then that's evidence that the Christianity is true, is what I gathered.
No, the evidence is because it is indeed good. The good thing that they claim is good is good.
I'm not quite following. So you're saying that Christianity is
It
good
is-
and therefore it is good? I'm trying to understand. Sorry.
No, the things that they claim it is good, like the telling you that you look good,
Right.
is a good thing
Can you give me
to do.
Can you give me an example of, in the Christian context, one of those good things?
Telling you that you look good.
Telling me that I look good is verification that
good thing.
Christianity is true?
Well, because Christianity claims that this is a good thing to do, telling the truth to others.
I'm not quite following. Like, okay, so if that is a method for determining whether something is true, what happens when a Muslim comes up to me and says, "Hey, Eric, you look good today"?
Oh, they have different claims about truth. They have two different about good, not truth. There are two different claims about what is true and what is good, or different definition of what is good. They will agree with me that telling you the truth is good, but they will decide or disagree with me that having more than one wife is a good thing.
Okay. So then how would you determine who's the good side of that then? Because like telling me that I look good is completely irrelevant to the discussion about Christianity versus Islam. The objective claims within those religions, I think, is probably more relevant to these evaluations. So just kind of focus in on that. Like, Christianity promotes monogamy, at least in the New Testament. Old Testament, not so much, but we'll just stick with the New Testament. And then in Islam, I'm not sure about the nitty-gritty of that religion, but we'll say, okay, sure, Islam allows for multiple wives. They at least do in their afterlife, like I think. But so we have those two opposing claims. How do we evaluate which of those claims are true?
So there are consequences for the claim that they hold. They say if you do that, it will happen something to you during life, not after death. We don't use after death claims. We use what happens to you if you do that, or what happens to society when society follow those rules, right? That's how you measure. Does it really do what it is supposed to do or claim to do? So you have this claim about having more than one wife is a good thing for you to be more fulfilled and those kind of things. And you observe if it is indeed the case for most people, humans.
Can a religion have a good principle or a good value and still be false?
Correct. Islam
Okay.
is one of those.
Can a religion also have a bad value and promote a bad principle and still be true?
Yes.
Okay.
It happens because Christianity, Catholicism in particular, had false claims about what is. They made mistakes, and then they were still true.
If a religion,
back then.
right? So if a religion is promoting good values and good principles and can be false,
Yeah.
and a religion is promoting a bad principle or a bad value and be true, then how do we use those to evaluate the truth and false values of the religions?
The most.
The most.
So
we have to like
it's,
we have
yeah,
to
it's the one who has the most correct claim about what is.
do we have to write
True.
them down and like tally them basically?
Well, you don't have to tally them, but yeah, there are claims that oppose each other, right?
How
Those
would
are the
we-
ones that you want to look at.
How would we determine which religion has the most good values?
Well, they have similar values. Most religions have similar values. Like they have the don't lie thing and be kind to each other and those kind of values. They have the same one. So you don't look at the same values. You look at the values that are different.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So how would we count those?
Yeah.
Like, how do we evaluate that? Because you're basically talking like a math equation at this point, which I can appreciate as a
Yeah.
math minor.
Yeah.
How
True.
would you evaluate?
Yeah.
How would you evaluate those sides of the math equation?
Well, the same way you evaluate the coffee cup. It's by a process. You learn. You meet a cup and you say, is it a coffee cup? And then no, yes, okay, yes. I categorize yes and no and yes and no. And as long as you do the thing again and again and again, you will learn which one is a real coffee cup and which one is not a real coffee cup. Which one is a true religion and which one is not the true religion. You need many cases. You need many examples, but at one point, you don't need to go all through all of them. You don't need to look at all the coffee cup in the world to know what a coffee cup is. You don't need to go to all the claims that a religion has to know which one is true.
You don't have to go through all the claims that the religion has to know which one is true. If you're basically saying we have an equation that we can use to determine which religion is true, but we don't need to evaluate that equation. That's kind of what I just heard.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Not all of the claims that the religion has. You
Could
can
someone
say, let's pick three claims that are opposing each other, and then compare those three. And if those three, well, there are three of those are correct in the Catholic religion and false in the Muslim religion, then the Catholic religion is more likely to be true. And if you need more than three, you can go for more than three. You can go 4 or 5. I don't know how many claims, different claims they have, opposite claims that they have. It is important to choose opposite claims. This is not a coffee cup. This is a teacup, or this is not a coffee cup. This is a bowl. You know, like opposite claims of what is. It is important to compare the claims about what is good or bad, because religion are the things that are telling you what is.
Is it
good or bad.
possible for somebody to use this method and the sample values and principles they choose from different religions is an incomplete set or a poor sample? Like, like the sampling problem where if your sample is too small, you don't get like a representation of the entire population. Is it possible for somebody to underrepresent and then come to a false conclusion based on this method? Like if they only chose
flat earthers.
if they only chose 3 things to evaluate, and the 3 they happen to choose evaluates to good in one religion, but bad in another religion, but the truth values are the opposite. Like, is it possible for this methodology to come up short and for it to actually lead you to a wrong conclusion?
Yes, that's what happened with flat earthers.
Right. So do we have a better methodology to use other than evaluating principles? Do we have something more, and on top of that, something more objective, because good and bad are relative to chosen goals. So is there something more objective we can maybe like sink our teeth into and evaluate? A more objective methodology?
Good or bad are objective. In the Catholic religion, you have the good things that aren't told by God. So it is.
But you could have not to cut you off, but in another religion, you could have a subjective morality as a tenet of another religion. So at that point, they're now incompatible. You can't even do a comparison anymore because the 2 systems are too different. That's a whole other can of worms about what would you do in that situation?
No. That's okay. You have a claim about subjective morality, and you have a claim of religion. We have the correct morality. Those 2 things are not compatible. If you know what is good, good should be objective, not subjective. if you claim as a religion you know what is good, the claim that you have shouldn't be subjective. It should be objective.
Can two people within the same religion come to different conclusions about a principle or a value? For instance, say the abortion issue. Can you have two Catholics? One agrees with abortion, one doesn't agree with abortion. Actually, maybe choose a better. Let me choose a better example.
Number of wives.
Let's say. Well, that's also a bad example, unfortunately.
Oh, sure.
Let's say one parent. Let's say one parent in Catholicism says spanking your child as discipline is good, and another parent in the same religion says spanking your child is bad. So we have two Catholics. They both have contradictory viewpoints about a certain principle. What do I do in that situation? How do I determine which one of those is the correct stance?
Discernment. You ask God. Basically, you ask God which one is the best for your kid.
Okay, so let's
is
say
it spanking or not spanking.
Let's say you and I are both evaluating this together. Let's say we're all four of us are Catholics. We're looking at these two parents. They have different principles about disciplining your child.
Yeah.
I say, Luke, you pray, and I will pray, and we hold our hands together and we pray, and then we both give our answer at the same time. And you say, I think the parent that doesn't spank their child is the good one, and then I simultaneously say, I think the parent that doesn't spank their child is the good one.
Yeah.
What do we do in that
Discernment
situation?
Well, you turn towards your fathers and the Bible. You when you have a difference, when you in your prayer, when you have conflict with yourself, usually discernment is with yourself. What should I do, or did I do good? Those kind of questions. But in your case, it's what should we do? Should we spank him or not spank him? That's the question you ask God. And each of the parents have a different answer. What they can do is turn towards someone else, a third person, that will pray and give the answer.
So you need a tiebreaker in that situation, basically.
This kind of thing. Yeah, well, maybe you time other person is okay too. You feel, it depends on the context. But yeah, more than just us two.
On a scale of 1 to
People
100.
that you feel are more connected to God than you. That's the main important thing. Sorry, I didn't say it.
No, it's okay. On a scale of 1 to 100, how reliable do you think this method is?
It is the most reliable things we have available to know what is. We're using it for the coffee cup, and we should use it for religion too.
Well, in the case of the coffee cup, though, you can actually hold it up and show others. Divine revelation, I can't do that. All I can tell you is what I'm thinking, right?
What? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. When you say this is a coffee cup, you're telling me what you're thinking, right?
When you're holding up the coffee cup, we have an
and I can see it.
An object in the world that we can all look at and agree to.
Yes.
But in the case of praying for an answer,
if I agree to you, it's because you told me that you were thinking we have the same religion. If you say this is a coffee cup, and I say yes, we have the same religion.
Right. But the thing is, though, with the prayer, I'm just trying to get to the core of the methodology here, because I'm a little confused about how it can be effective. Because I'm seeing issues here. I'll be honest, I see issues with the methodology. So when somebody prays and they have a divine revelation, a feeling, a thought, they're moved by something, and then they express that. And we have two people doing that same process, but then they both express opposite viewpoints. How do we do a tiebreaker? And you said we add a third person in there and we rely on that person. But if that works, then I can add a fourth person in there and bring back the tie. And we can add a fifth person, and then a tie breaks the other direction.
Yeah.
Right? So how would that be a reliable method for determining who's correct?
At one point, it won't do that. It won't do that. When you have someone says, this is a coffee cup, and then you bring someone else and says, this is not a coffee cup, and then you bring a third person and he says, this is a coffee cup, and then you bring a fourth person and it says, this is not a coffee cup. How would you tie the break? You tie the break at one point. Most people will agree this is a coffee cup. This is how you tie a break about what is true in the word for the coffee cup and for the which one is good to do for your kid in the context that your kid is. It's how the word works. It is easy for us. For me, I use a coffee cup because it is evident for you that I have a coffee cup in front of me. But some people think that it is not a coffee cup, and they will argue that it is not a coffee cup. And it gives you reasons to think that it is not a coffee cup. The same thing applies to should we spank our kids? They will give you reasons to why we should or shouldn't do it, and then they will at one point they will tell you, okay, this is really God who taught me that, and they will give you reasons why this is God who spoke to them, and then you compare the reasons why the person says this is not a coffee cup, and then
Can you
you go back to your teachings and words and meanings and those kind of things.
Can you give me an example of a reason to know that God talked to you? Because I guess in my scenario, when I was painting, when two people pray for the same thing to the same God and they both get different answers, is God talking to both of them and giving them both opposing answers? Is one of them not actually talking to God? Are they both not actually talking to God?
They're both talking to God and not listening to the answer. There's only one answer. That's why it's objective truth.
How would you determine
or objective morality?
Go ahead.
Yeah, because there is only one good answer. It is good or it is bad. There is no gray. Some people think there is a gray answer. There is no gray answer. There is only one answer. That's why it is objective morality. And one of them wouldn't listen to God, wasn't listening to what God says when he says, let's say, you shouldn't. He said you shouldn't spank your kids.
That's actually the core of my question there.
We should spank our kids.
That's actually the core of my question there. How would we know which one of those individuals God is actually talking to? How could we know?
The same way we know this is a coffee cup. We go through the process and compare. How do we know it is really God who talked to you when he said that you should or shouldn't?
Okay, and how would we do that? My question is how. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I might not. I might not be conveying my question clearly to you. So, the coffee cup is an object in the world that we show to others. It's an external entity outside of the two people evaluating it. With the matter of prayer, there is no outside external entity that we're evaluating from an objective standpoint. We're both internalizing a process. So can you produce to me?
God is the one external from you.
Okay, can we
It's
produce a God?
But it is external.
Can we produce that God and actually evaluate it at that point then? Like the same way we do with a coffee cup?
No, it's not physical. God is not physical. The answer is not physical. There is no physical thing that you could point towards.
So that'd be like saying that I have a coffee cup. That'd be like me saying that I have a coffee cup, but I can't show it to you because coffee cup's not physical. It's a non-physical coffee cup. So
when you have an argument,
without getting too much deeper in the weeds, I'm just asking, can you at least understand, kind of more where I am at as a street epistemologist and as a skeptic?
Yes.
Can you understand that I'm seeing issues with this methodology here? Can you understand my point of view, kind of where I'm coming from with this?
Yes, the issue with people like you is, or in your case, in your position, is that I use something that is evident or not. There is no doubt about it. But if I use something where there is doubt about it out there, like the shape of the earth, some people cast doubt about the shape of the earth. They say maybe it's not as spherical as people claim to be. They claim something different about the shape of the earth. How would you discern if it is which shape is the correct one? You look at the claim of the ones who say it is not spherical or doubt the spherical claim, and you compare those. This is similar. It's not the same because you have physical things that you agree with the one who measure the earth or the one who holds the coffee cup, but you don't have physical things when it comes to God.
So in the case with the earth thing, though, I can run tests to gather evidence. I can I can actually build my own balloon and send it up to take photos from the outer atmosphere. We have NASA, we have the aviation.
You have
everything.
many examples. Yes,
we have. We have evidence that we can use to analyze and evaluate.
You consider evidence. Yes, you don't have evidence for God praying to someone, right? Am I
We
correct?
We don't have evidence for God answering
You,
people's
Eric,
prayers.
not we. You, Eric.
I currently don't. I'm asking for it. I currently
There
have
you go.
no evidence of
So
that.
you have evidence for the
Luke,
coffee cup.
hold
You
on,
have
Luke,
evidence for the shape of the earth, but you don't have evidence for the prayer. And that's the gist of it. You didn't
that's why I'm asking
formulate
you.
what evidence could be, not is, but could be for the prayer to be coming from God.
Yeah.
You didn't formulate anything, and that's why you have trouble understanding what is. Is it really God saying that, or is it God saying the other thing? It's because you don't have anything to compare it to, because in your worldview, you don't have God.
So Luke, is there evidence you could present me about the prayer thing? Because I agree with you. I don't have evidence, and that's why I'm asking you for evidence. So do you have evidence you could present me?
I don't know what you're looking for, Eric. When I say, let me check. Let me tell you. Let me show you an example. When I say I have a coffee cup in front of me, and I think that a good evidence for you to believe me is for me to hold the coffee cup in front of the camera. Then you can see it, and then you believe. That's it. I know this is a good evidence for you for the coffee cup in front of me. I know what a good evidence for you is. When you ask, what is, give me an evidence for a prayer, I don't know what you're asking for because I don't have any idea. And you neither have any idea of what a good evidence is for a prayer.
But you have your idea of what evidence for prayer is, right?
Yeah, but we don't have the same evidence.
Well, what is the evidence for your prayer? What is your evidence for prayer?
It's nothing for you, Eric. It's not enough for you. My evidence is not the same evidence that you have. But the thing that I believe,
it might be.
Yes.
It might be enough evidence for me if you tried. What is your evidence for prayer?
Yeah. So, like I said, others to ask God, and I believe what they told me. I trust them to not lie to me.
Okay.
This is evidence.
But then
for
this would go back into the scenario we had before, where we have basically counting who gets what answer and having tiebreakers.
I understand it's not enough for you, Eric. I told you it wasn't enough.
Forgive me. I'm a little concerned why it's enough for you on that, but that's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and leave it there.
If it's for the same reason, it is a coffee cup. That's why. Why is it enough? Because the reason why I have a coffee cup in front of me, the reason why I believe that the thing that is shown to me on the camera is the real thing is because someone told me so. I didn't check. I don't know if the microphone that you have in front of you is not a prop that is in plastic, and the microphone that I'm hearing is coming from somewhere else. I don't have this kind of knowledge, right? But I will have the similar knowledge of what is in front of me, what I see, and I trust what I see. I trust that you're not lying to me when I say that, and I trust that they are not lying to me when they say that God told them this is the correct answer.
Okay, well, leave it there. Sorry, Pierce. I strayed off the SE path a little bit. I'm going to bring it right back, and Pierce, get us back on track here.
All right, let's get back on track. Thanks, Luke, for coming up. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Luke.
But we'll talk later. All right.
Bye.
All right. So let's move on to the next caller. You finally were able to get up. I'm so happy.
Yeah. There was some problem with Discord where there was something else in front of the button and I couldn't press it.
Oh, okay. It happens.
Are you on mobile or computer? Or
yes, I was on mobile.
Okay, yeah. UIs on mobile get kind of weird sometimes. I used to work with that a little bit. It gets really, really odd, especially with those like responsive interfaces that change things around depending on the size of your screen. It gets kind of weird sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, so if you were to answer the question of the day here, which religion is true? How would you answer?
Oh, it's about I think the question's kind of problematic because it's not it's assuming that there is a religion that is true and kind of that it's one religion, and also that religion is the kind of thing that has a truth value in the first place. And I think that depends on what you. I don't think that being a part of a religion usually involves accepting certain propositional truths, but this is not. I don't think it's an essential feature of a religion.
Okay. Okay. I think I can have appreciation for what you said. I think you were saying so like religion doesn't necessarily have a truth value, so there can be some things in a religion that are true, some things in a religion that are false. It may not be a overall everything's true, everything's false. There might be some nuance to that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, what I mean is, I think practicing a religion is more about what you do. It's more of like about a way of accepting a way of being, and that might involve accepting certain propositions, but that's not an essential feature of what a religion is. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
I think so.
It's more about practices and the state of mind.
I put in the chat,
Things like
Portiel. I put in the chat the topic of the SE presentation we're giving right now. I reworded it a little bit. Is that rewording more what you're looking for? Which religions, if any, are true? Would that be
Which religions, if any, are true?
Because it covers everything.
Okay.
Either no religions are true, only one religion is true, or there's multiple religions that are true, or all of religions are true. Is that kind of more in alignment?
I don't mean to bog down the conversation too much, but what would you how would we define religion here?
That's a good question. I would say that a religion is almost universally following some type of divine being as a god. Almost all of them. There are some atheist religions out there, but they have a dogma, tenets, core principles, and some type of maybe substantial population over some arbitrary number, I guess. You can have two people get together and say we believe something. Maybe that's not a religion, but you get 1,000 people together, then yeah, maybe that's a religion. So probably around in there. So tenets, dogmas, principles usually follows a divine being or a god as some type of authority figure at the top. Yeah, that's probably what I would put it.
Okay.
How about you?
And a true religion would be a religion with dogmas that are true.
Yeah, the tenets and the principles actually are objectively true. But go ahead, Piers. I don't want to interrupt you.
I was just going to say one in which those tenets correspond with reality.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll take that because that's more concise.
Okay. Well,
so kind of looping back to what you were saying earlier. So you said accepting, you were describing kind of what religion kind of meant to you, and you said like accepting a way of being. From what I understood, it was kind of like a lifestyle thing, like how you behave.
basically, yeah.
Okay, cool. So like how you're behaving based on a set of values, it sounds like. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Is there
a set of values?
Yeah.
Sure.
Is that okay? Cool. Well, for the sake of the show, do you mind? Do you subscribe to something like this, like you described?
That's I not particularly, I suppose. I don't think I would say I do.
Okay.
But it depends on. That's a part of the reason that for the definition, it depends on what you take religion to be.
Sure. Well, I guess what brought you up here on stage?
Well, I guess I I interpreted the topic as something more like, how do we know which religion is true, or something like that.
That's very
Mhm.
closely related. I mean,
Exploring that.
that's epistemology right there. So yeah, that's on topic.
Yeah.
So do you have a religion that you accept as true?
I wouldn't say, like, in terms of system that like situated in a culture with certain dogmas and tenets and uh, what was the third? It has practices, things like that. No, not really.
Okay. Do you believe a God exists?
Yes, I would. I'm a pantheist,
You're a pantheist.
Spinozist pantheist.
Okay. So as a pantheist, correct me if I'm wrong, you're basically saying that God is everywhere, God is everything, like God is the universe.
Basically,
Okay.
everything that exists is in God.
Does this
Like,
sorry, go ahead.
I think that's it.
Okay.
What were you gonna say?
Do you think that this pantheist God, this God you believe in, do you think it's a thinking entity? Does it make decisions? Does it influence events? Does it care about us? Does it interact with us? Like, at what level does it interact with itself? I guess because I'm part of the universe.
Well,
I guess that would make me also partly God. So anyway, just kind of lay out what does your God do? I guess is what I want to ask.
well, it would have to be a thinking thing because thinking exists, and so thinking would have to be one of the things that is in God or that God does.
So would a rock think under that framework then?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's possible that a rock might think in some way.
Possible,
but that's kind of a
possible.
That's kind of a different
Mhm.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's possible, but you don't know. Basically, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm undecided on that.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. Please continue describing your God to me.
Yeah. In terms of decisions, like, does God deliberate and then choose one thing over another?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I don't think that's I don't think that's something that you can reason about God, or that's like a necessary feature of God. I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you think your God has a will, has opinions about what it wants to happen, but it doesn't necessarily do things to make that happen, but it has like opinions about it, has thoughts on it?
Yeah. I think in a sense God has a will, yes, but I don't think it would make sense to say that God has like a will that one thing happen over another thing. That it doesn't make sense to say that God wish that something happened didn't happen, because I think that would be just a contradiction.
Okay.
So in a sense, God has a will, but it's just that everything exists as it is.
Okay. And I guess my last question for that is, before we kind of start really analyzing these claims, what's your confidence level from 0 to 100 that your understanding of what this pantheist God is accurate? Like from 0, no confidence, to 100, absolute confidence. Kind of where you at?
It depends on which part of it we're talking about, but I think like the most basic part of it, like that there is being, and that everything is somehow, everything exists, everything is in being in some way. I think that is to deny it would be contradictory, and so that fundamental idea about what God is kind of undeniable. There are other ideas I have that I'm not sure about, like whether God can deliberate about things, or if that's even meaningful, or whether
The details are murky, but you know that the God exists. Like you're 100% confident the God exists, but some of the details you're unsure about.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Can you conceive of anything that would knock you off of that 100% value, even if it's just down to 99%? Can you conceive of any new piece of information you might receive in the future where you go, well, maybe no longer 100%, maybe just 99%?
I don't think so. I think it comes from just my understanding of the concept of God. I would have to change my understanding of the concept of God to change my mind on it. Does that make sense?
I think so. I was going to ask you, like, what if like a real God appeared to you and says, no, I'm not, pantheism's not true, I'm the real God. And then you just anticipated my response. So yeah, I guess you would have to see hard evidence that a God exists, but it's not the pantheist God, I guess.
I would have to ask him what his reasoning is.
Yeah.
I guess I could I could possibly be convinced that well, maybe not.
So
I
might
guess
seem
I have maybe a 95, a high confidence of pantheism over some kind of like idea of like a separate things existing, having a separate existence from God.
Okay,
but
so I'm canceling out the 100.
It's not 100%.
Okay, so I just canceled out the 100. I wrote my nose and I put down 95 instead.
Something like that.
Okay, cool. All right. I guess another question I have then is this might seem very closely related, but it's at a little bit of a different angle. Let's say you really wanted to determine whether your belief is true or not. And I think, for instance, falsifications are really, it's the way you do that. You have to have like a falsification criterion for just about any proposition, just basically a way for you to know you could be wrong about this. Do you think you have any falsification criterion or criteria for your God proposition? Like, if you are wrong, do you have a method to know?
Well, I don't think I do, since this is kind of really it's not empirical. It's kind of is from pure reason. So
okay,
you would have to, if I had a falsification criterion, I probably wouldn't already believe it.
Okay.
I'd like to ask exactly the same thing that Eric just asked, but in a completely different way. Do you remember Alan from earlier in the show?
Yeah, the alien.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Clean slate. So he comes back down, or he comes down for the first time, right? Lands a spaceship. He's talking to you. He hears you talking about pantheism. Okay. What can Alan learn or discover to figure out if what you're saying is true or false?
What can Alan discover?
Yeah, how does he figure it out?
Okay, so he would look at the world and analyze what it means for things to exist, what it means for things to exist as separate from other things, and depending on it would depend a lot on his starting assumptions, how he would actually get from one place to another.
Is the
I think it would mostly involve. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead and complete your thought, please.
It would mostly involve just analyzing the idea of existence.
Do you have the idea of a pantheist God in your presuppositions?
In my presuppositions,
Mhm.
it depends on what you mean by presuppositions. You mean like things I believe without any evidence, or
just your starting
do you mean by
assumptions
that?
about reality? I mean, everyone has presuppositions when they come to. It's a little bit more philosophical, but just everyone has some type of base assumptions that they don't need to ground or justify in anything. They're just there because it's a starting point. You know, like the laws of logic can be an example. Would you say you have your pantheist God inside your presuppositions, or do you have like an agnostic set of presuppositions, and then you get to the God conclusion based off of those?
Yeah, no, I would say the pantheist God is a logical consequence of whatever presuppositions I might have.
Okay. So I'll take it as it's the latter. You have agnostic, you have presuppositions
Yeah,
agnostic to the existence of any God, and you can lead that to, okay. All right.
In the sense that it doesn't presuppose it. I wouldn't say it's agnostic in that it doesn't.
Right.
To me, that sounds like it doesn't have any. It doesn't logically lead to that conclusion.
So let's say, just to kind of, I want to feed back into Pierce's line of questioning. I'm going to pass back over to you, Pierce. Let's say Alan, the alien, comes down. He has the same presuppositions you do. What would be the first step you would guide him on to get to your pantheist conclusion?
Let's say, does this alien have any concept of God or what God is?
You could describe it to him.
Yeah.
Okay.
He is capable of understanding it in the same way that you do.
Okay. Does he have any concept of existence?
He has the same.
He's here with you. You know, you're speaking to him. He knows he's here. He's conscious.
He has the same starting assumptions as you do, so we can probably safely say that those like very low level, bedrock type questions, he just accepts because he has the same presuppositions and assumptions as you do.
Okay. I would say if you take God to be a ground of being, that you would have to I'm trying to think about the best way to do it without like using technical language.
No worries. Take your time.
Spinoza himself does it using the idea of substance, which is kind of technical, and basically that you could say that that's kind of the most primary, most basic kind of thing that can exist, that all things supervene on, you might say. And so there has to be, included in the idea of existence, you have to have some kind of understanding of a substance, a thing that exists. And I would also say that in order to say that two things exist, you have to say they exist kind of in the same way. They don't exist in like, you have to be using that word univocally. You can't equivocate on that word, or you kind of, they have to exist in the same sense. And so you have, things exist, and they exist in the same way. So there has to be
okay. Okay, so
There,
two
well, there are
things-
also some kind of complicated moves that involve talking about the nature of substance and how there can't be two substances, which involve just the fact that substances can't be distinguished from each other except well, what were you going to say?
So we got these two things that exist, and then I'm trying to follow your route to pantheism. What's the connecting point between these two things existing and pantheism being true?
My concept of God is a ground of being. And so you'd have to have some kind of, in a basic sense, you'd have to have some kind of ground of being for things to exist. So from that point, you already have some kind of God. Is it pantheist God or is it some other kind of God? I think the question would be, is God's being separate or is it the same as things that actually exist?
Were you saying?
What was that?
Sorry, were you saying that in order for you to come to the conclusion that pantheism is true, you first have to have a belief that a God exists? Like that's a prerequisite? You have to go to that place before you get to where you are?
Not necessarily. That's just kind of the way I was going about it.
Okay.
There are different ways you could do it. You could maybe just show that, and that also this kind of idea of God would not be considered God by a lot of people as well. So you kind of have to show that this thing I call God is the same thing that other people think about when they talk about God. And some people might say that's not God, that's just nature, or it's just existence, or something like that.
Okay. We
So
will
maybe
have to. Sorry, complete your thought. I interrupted.
If I were really trying to convince somebody of this, I would probably, if they didn't already believe in a God, I would probably not use the word God, and just get them to the same point where they believe in the same kind of thing and just don't use the same word. And if they did believe in God, then I could use the word and kind of reason them to that point, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that might be an interesting and perhaps a viable strategy. We will we'll try to get to the last caller shortly, but I do want to ask one last line of questioning. Is this belief important to you?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. And why is it important to you?
Because it's kind of a part of the basic understanding I have of the world and of myself. And so it kind of precedes a lot of other ideas I have about the world.
If you woke up tomorrow and you realize, you know what, I don't actually think pantheism's true anymore, and you abandon the belief, how would you feel and how would your life change?
I would feel, there would probably be a period of of I would feel weird for a while, and I would take a while to process. But I'd be fine after that.
Yeah, I relate to that because you
I'd
described
feel
kind of-
better.
yeah, I relate to that because that's what I went through when I deconverted about 15 years ago. It was some low points, some churn, and then for me it went back up, and I had excitement at reevaluating reality, and it was something that I feared at first, but then I embraced afterwards, and I felt much better about it. So you're speaking to me. I went through that same exact thing.
Yeah, I think I'd always be happy to be closer to the truth if I actually believed I was.
That's great. I just really appreciate it. To me, I perceived you as giving just a ton of thought to the questions that we were asking. I could hear you taking pauses, and I could practically hear the thinking going on in your head. So I just want to say thank you. I think that's so great. I'm assuming my perception was correct.
I sense the same
Yeah,
thing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to take too much time, but I do need to take a little bit of time to think about these questions.
You're fine.
Yeah.
The whole point of this exercise is to get people to think. So the fact that you were taking time to think we're accomplishing our goal. So we're very happy to see it. So thanks, Portil. Appreciate it.
All right, we will bring up the final contestant. Not really contestant. Final caller, Victor. What's up, Victor?
What's up, guys? How's it going? Wow, that guy was a riot, huh? Everybody at the edge of their seat right now?
I thought it was a good call. I liked it. I like talking to him.
I almost killed myself.
I don't recommend doing that. Are you okay?
I will be because I have God.
Okay.
It might surprise you, but I'm also a Christian. I'm a fan of Jesus Christ. And I think that makes the most sense and is the best religion and the truest religion because it's very easy and simple. It's not all that people tell you that it is. It's simply the pursuit of life. It's to believe that the creator of life didn't create it to waste it, pursues it to the end, and that we could be along for the ride. That's really all it is. It's not a bunch of rituals and ceremonies and imbued with some particular culture, either Israelite or Roman. It's just the outright pursuit of life. And I think, even if an alien came to me and asked me how to believe in my religion or how to understand it, I would tell him to look at how life operates. I would say, if there is no existence, there's no perception or opportunity to make a judgment of whether something has value or not. So life has to get a +1 on the value chart to begin with. And if God created, it's because he intends for things to exist. And if that's all we know about him, then why wouldn't that create the kind of pattern that would cause him to go forward and sustain it? And my God sustains it forever.
Okay. So I heard you say that Christianity is the pursuit of life. Then you elaborated a little bit more on that. Something about God created it. So it sounds like there's a little bit more to it than just the pursuit of life. Seems like there's a few more things that are involved in Christianity.
Not really. I mean, there's
No?
more. I mean, there's always more to know about everything, But if you're just talking about worshiping the God, being a Christian, getting on the path, you have to start at the beginning, and that's to understand the God who created life is trying to sustain it, and you should be a part of that.
Could God create life and not need to sustain it himself? Could God create like a self-sustaining life that he doesn't have to like touch at all?
Well, he could, I suppose, but that would
Okay.
still entail a God who, places value in life. And if you're a deist who thinks, okay, God just creates, and that's all you know about him, and you still have a pattern forming there. Why would you have no reason to negate the idea that he would go forward in that pattern and sustain a life that he creates? or it, or whatever you would like to call the God, or the creative will that makes things exist.
So why do you think that the God created and actively sustains life over a God who created and doesn't actively sustain life?
Well, I just told you why. Because if
Well-
all you know about God is that you exist because of him, there's no reason to interrupt the pattern and carry it forward into sustaining the life that you create. There's no reason to maintain a deistic position towards God.
I'm not even talking about a deistic position. I mean, God could potentially still be active in some way in the universe, but basically just this one attribute of a God. Like take your God that you're talking about and change just one aspect about him. Instead of creating life that depended on him for being sustained, he just created a life that is self-sustaining, and then everything else is equal. Like, how would you determine which of those is true? Because either God did that or he didn't.
Well, how I determined that personally wasn't an intellectual journey. You know, the contact was made by God first. You know, and I kind of came into it maybe backwards from a lot of people. I wasn't convinced intellectually to give it a try. I was kind of hoodwinked into it and learned what it was about afterwards.
So you had an experience then, or a series of experiences?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Can you describe to us one of these experiences, maybe the one that stands out the most?
Well, I'll tell you how I became a Christian. I mean, I was a teenage boy troublemaker, you know, walking down the street one day with my friend, and an old man pulled over in his beat-up hatchback, ran over to me, started asking me some pretty, you know, straightforward questions. Asked me if I was a sinner, and I said yes, gladly, because I was a proud criminal. He asked me if I believed in God. I said yes, because I did. I was not stupid enough to reject the idea of God at that point. And then he asked me if God had offered to give me eternal life as a gift, would I be willing to accept it? And I said yes. And then he asked if he could pray for me, and I said yes. And I walked on, not considering that anything more than paying, you know, doing a good deed for a desperate old man who wanted to talk about whatever was important to him. But the next day, when I woke up, I saw the world completely differently. I was abject to my old habits, and I didn't even know why. I didn't think to myself I had just become a Christian that day. I thought I was depressed. For about a decade, I thought I was just a depressed guy who hated the world, you know, went around scornful. And one day when I heard the preaching of Jesus Christ and his sacrifice on the cross, I had I guess a daydream or a vision, and I realized that on that day, on the side of the road, that I had become a Christian, and I started to study, and I found that in the Bible, Jesus says that if you should repent and recognize your sin, you know, turn away from justifying your error and turn to him and put your trust in his sacrifice, that he will indwell you with his spirit and he will write his law on your heart and you will become a new man. And when I saw that, I realized that nobody else could match that claim. Nobody else could have done that to me, and that this is my God. And so the rest of it is kind of trying to make sense of what he says. Now that I know he's my God.
You concluded that the only explanation to the story, the anecdote you just gave us, is that God must exist and that God actually did those things for you. That's the only conclusion?
Well, I had already believed there was a God, but I didn't know who he was. And before that, prior to that and for that 10 years I described, I was pretty much like an agnostic universalist. I thought, far be it from me to understand God. I'm just a man and he's God. Why would he expect me to know anything about him, you know? But looking back, you know, that's so stupid, because if he is a God, why couldn't he figure out how to let me know him?
What's your confidence level that you accurately identified the cause of this conversion as God? Like from 0 to 100, like say 0, 100%. So there's zero possibility that.
I mean,
this was
99. 0. I guess I might have hit my head that day and forgot about it. I don't know.
Hey,
but I certainly wasn't motivated to make that change, and I didn't recognize the cause, or even You know, like I
That-
said, I thought I fell into a depression, so I
That
wasn't
was-
out to become a Christian when it
Sure.
happened.
Yeah, I think a lot of converts will say that they weren't out to become like a Muslim when it happened, or a Mormon when it happened. So, all right. So I appreciate the 99%. At least you're entertaining the, hey, maybe there's something in there that I just missed. That
Sure, I may be
just-
crazy.
yeah,
Some people have said so.
yeah. So I mean, it could be traumatic head injury, false memories, different things. You already mentioned the traumatic head injury, but let's say the traumatic head injury and also the God explanation are actually false. That's not actually what motivated you to change. Can you think of any other reasons that might fit in that 1% that you described?
I really can't. I mean, I didn't do any heavy drugs that night, though. That's something I might have done. That was one of my habits, was a lot of drugs. But I didn't do a lot of, I didn't have any other real experiences. Went home, went to sleep. My whole mind was changed.
Yeah, and I can appreciate
Victor,
that. Go ahead, Bruce.
if someone else from a different religion or believed in a different God or anything that's a little bit different than the conclusion you came to, maybe even not a big difference in the conclusion, maybe even a little difference. If they had a similar experience and one day they woke up and they thought they were depressed and then they became Hindu, Muslim, whatever you want, maybe a different denomination, whatever you want to insert there. Would that mean that whatever conclusion they came to is true?
Well, I mean, I would say to them probably that, God, they were establishing a relationship with God, but a lot of times, our seeking for knowledge gets in the way, like I could have easily thought that, Buddha did that for me or something and started gathering knowledge about Buddha. But in the end, I'm still going to have that relationship with God that's going to pull me in the right direction eventually.
How do you know you've gotten there already? How do you know it's not actually Buddha?
Well, I mean, for me, I'm getting kind of old here. I've been in a relationship with my God for a long time, and I've had a lot of, I've done a lot of study as well. I've had answered prayers and verified, the truth of the scripture to myself, to my satisfaction. I find it to be absolutely reliable.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed that just a little bit. You find what absolutely reliable?
My God.
You find your God absolutely reliable. Okay.
I think I heard you say that you kind of got your foot got in the door. It sounds like with the experience, meeting this older gentleman, the what you thought was depression, and then you said you verified the scripture. I'm wondering how you went about that.
Well, like philosophically, I can't prove to everybody every word of scripture is true, but when I challenge the philosophy and the teachings in the scripture, the things that fly in the face of supposed common knowledge, against reality or whatever people would call it, it tends to hold true against, what's become common knowledge, the way that we treat people, like everybody any one of you would recognize if I said we don't know what love is in society, right? We throw that word around and we have no idea how to actually do it. As a race, we just don't.
Victor, I'm wondering which is more important, like the values of Christianity, like the things that, like the stuff that you can verify in the scripture that is true, or if what's more important is the actual like belief in a God.
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't think God, like if God forgives murder, he forgives a lack of knowledge or mistaken knowledge, but what it comes down to is, if I toss you in the middle of a lake, are you going to, call out to the government or are you going to call out to God? What are you going to do? It's not about what you think you know about him. I think I know certain things, but I know I don't know everything, and I'm certainly wrong about things.
So if that 1% actually, if the real explanation for your experiences was lying in that 1%, and you had misattributed to a god, let's say tomorrow morning you wake up and you realize, oh, the actual explanations within that 1%, it was something I didn't consider before, or something. You just have a change of mind about it. What do you think might cause that? Like what series? Because you described the series of events that led you up to believing. Is there a conceivable series of events that would lead you out of believing, and then one day you wake up and you go, "Oh, I actually don't believe anymore"? Do you think there's a...
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay. If you did wake up tomorrow, I don't know. Sorry, Pierce. I don't know if you asked this question yet or not. I know you asked it to everybody else, so it's starting to blur together. But if you did somehow wake up tomorrow, Victor, and you realize you didn't believe anymore, how would you feel? How would that affect your life?
Oh man, I'd probably be whistling zippity doo-dah. I'd have so much weight off my shoulders, a whole level of responsibility just gone towards my fellow man. I could pretty much go back to having my way with them.
I find that an interesting answer, because when I deconverted, I didn't experience any of that. Why would you have a shift to that type of, I don't know what's a good word. I don't want to be derogatory or anything like, but like kind of like a barbarism type position. Like, I'm just gonna have my way with people. Why would you switch from
Because that's
now
efficient.
to that? Because it's efficient.
And like, why do you assume that you were a Christian if you're not one now? Like, am I allowed to ask you questions, or am
Sure.
I just kind of on the hot seat here?
You can ask me questions, sure. But the focus is mostly you, but I'll gladly ask some questions in return.
Okay. Well, like, my reasoning is that there's no such thing as an ex-Christian. Like, because the principle is to repent and give up the crown that Adam stole, right? So you give up your authority to God, and if you ask for it back the next day, God says no. So you're either still a Christian who's in denial, or you never were a Christian. That's my understanding.
Unless, I'm gonna push back a little bit. Unless that 1% is true, though, and that God doesn't exist, right? If that 1%'s actually reality.
The 1% is insanity. It's not the non-existence of the God, because you would have still given sincerely that authority up to the God, and you would, whether he exists or not, you would think that you can't ask for it back if you had truly entrusted it to him.
Okay, so is the claim basically that either I was never a true Christian, or I still am a Christian despite what I'm saying now?
Yes. Like, you may be lying to yourself because you just don't like the way it makes you feel. So.
I could very well be lying to myself. That's definitely a possibility. I could be delusional. I could have hit my head. I could have maybe done drugs in the past that I don't remember, and now I'm not quite functioning correctly. And all kinds of possibilities. I mean, I'll lay those on the table. In fact, I'll even put it at, say, to answer my own questions, I'll put it there at like 97%. I'm confident that I'm being truthful with myself. That I know that I wasn't a Christian. I was a Christian, but I'm not. I'm actually an atheist. But 2-3%. Yeah, sure, I'll put that in there. I don't
even think atheists exist, but we probably shouldn't go down that road. This is going to become a whole thing.
Okay. So, I guess my last question would be for this. Actually, I don't think I have one. I'll go ahead and pass back over to Pierce.
All right. Nice to meet you, Eric.
Mm-hmm. Good meeting you.
I think I might have asked this already, but if I did, please forgive me. This belief in Christianity, why is it important to you?
I think it's the most important thing. The cause of life and the end of life, and it's the path to get on if you want to do well for others, and see life go on.
Can someone who doesn't believe in Christianity still move on?
Well, doesn't believe in Christianity is like a weird kind of a way to phrase it, because do you mean like hasn't obtained a specific amount of knowledge, or isn't willing to rely on God for all the things?
I would say the first one hasn't obtained the necessary knowledge to convince them.
I don't think there's a knowledge threshold. The knowledge threshold is knowing you can't be God and you need to repent. And, after that, you're fortunate to be able to obtain whatever knowledge you can about the God that you're trusting.
It's really interesting. It's so interesting. We could go down this whole rabbit hole, but I don't know. I don't know if we should, or if we should just.
I don't want to hold up the line, but I got a minute.
There's no.
Well, this
line.
is the end. Yeah.
We're breaking
Oh,
3
okay.
hours, so brain's a little
Yeah.
shred now.
Well, I'll come back again next time you guys are here
Yeah,
on the wonderful PNR.
but let's see here. So, I guess let me wrap up with this. So, I'm sure you probably heard about the Alan the Alien question up to this point. So the whole purpose of the Alan the Alien thing is something called the outsider test for faith. So you've given us a series of religious claims and your reasonings for them, and we can pick just about any other religion, Muslim, Hindu, Mormon, Scientology, and they'll have their list of reasons and their reasoning. And you're talking to someone who's completely agnostic, a blank slate, like an alien or maybe like a newborn sentient computer or something like that. How would you explain to that being why your position is correct and everyone else is wrong? Like, do you have like some?
Well, it's
like,
kind of
an
like
extra
I've been
oomph you
saying.
can give?
It's it's the basic raw way of life, and there's a low bar for entry.
So if
All you have to do is understand to put life, the creator of life and the pursuit of it ahead of what you're doing, because it's not only the way to please God, but it's freaking logical, because you can't do it if you're not alive.
so
I could imagine like a Hindu saying like,
Yeah.
well, that's obviously Vishnu. Vishnu is clearly who you're describing.
and
How do we
Victor
know
say
if
that,
it's...
but
and word
if
for
we're talking
word,
about like an advanced intellect who has the ability to study all these things through to the end, I have the utmost of faith and knowledge that they will find that the truest strain of the pursuit of life is in Christianity.
well, let me rephrase.
Not only is it the creation, but it goes on forever.
Let me rephrase
For
that.
free almost.
The entity you're talking to doesn't have like any type of like superior intellect to us. It's just a blank slate. It could be a robot, or it could be an alien, or it could be just a
That's the best
person
thing.
living on an island for their entire life, and they're finally getting to know Christianity.
That's the best thing about it.
But verbatim, what you said, that first thing you would tell that person, as Pierce has pointed out very aptly, a Hindu could say that word for word. That's what a Muslim would say to this person. So they're still in the same boat at that point. They're getting the same first step from all three candidates.
Well, like if they're like a child, then I would, if they have the mind of a child, and I know that, then I would explain it to them a little differently, because God is telling us to be like innocent children of faith, and if they go look at Islam, they're going to see that they have to do a lot of things. They have to go to war. Do you think a person with a childlike mind would like to go to war, or go and be held by his father for free because he loves him?
Should we use our visceral emotional reactions to a proposition to determine whether it's true or not?
Well, if you're telling me to treat it like a child, then I think of a child.
I didn't say treat it like a child. I just treat it as a blank slate. It's on our par of intelligence. It has our capability of learning. It's not super intelligent. It's not child. It's just you're talking to a person who's never heard of these concepts before, but they at least have the intellectual capacity to understand them as we do. That's the whole point of the outsider test of faith. So,
well, like if they're not lame of thinking, even if they have a blank slate, they would see the continual prioritizing of life in Christianity, and the inconsistency of how life is treated in Islam.
But they find that life is treated. Did you say consistently?
Yes.
Is there another religion that? Yeah, could other religions see the value in preservation of life?
Well, they have a value in preserving life in a way, but they have no then value in like the value that's already there. You know, it's like Hinduism and the Dharma wheel will keep you going around and around in this world, but it offers no way to better the product that you get, and no judge to decide where you wind up. It's just like kind of a random, like who decides, like if somebody's consistent, like we're talking about an alien who's not dumb, right? So is he going to ask, like I do, who decides whether an ant is better than a bear, or or a goat is better than a pig? What do I become when I'm reincarnated, and who decides why?
Something that's important to determining if the religion is true is some sort of ultimate judge. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, in order for something to occur consistently, there needs to be like a law, and a law signifies authority. Authority doesn't just spring up, it needs to be held in place. Otherwise, it would change like everything else under some other authority.
Okay. Laws like physical laws are you referring to, or?
Well, those are the ones we probably know best in this closed system of creation.
Okay. So we observe but
they give us an idea of the kind of authority that we're under, beyond our, we understand it so well that it becomes a subconscious kind of a thing. We don't even acknowledge it as authority.
So are you saying that we see laws in nature, and therefore there must be a lawgiver, essentially?
Well, that's not what I was saying, but I probably would say that if you'd let me get around to it, Eric.
Okay, go for it. So are there, I guess probably maybe a thing to ask would be, the laws we see in nature, people tend to conflate those with laws we see like within our legislation and our parliaments and such, congresses, descriptive versus prescriptive type laws. So do you think that pretty much anything that we as humans call a law that's within nature was prescribed by some type of lawgiver? I guess I'm rephrasing the same question, but you're basically saying that, well, these are the same laws as the ones we see in our courts.
There is authority there. Like, I try to advise Christians and atheists alike to try to strip away anthropomorphic context from these terms when we talk about religion, because if there is a God, he's bowing down to us to speak in our terms, and his concepts are greater, at least in some way, okay? So, like, when we think of authority, we say, well, that can't be authority because somebody would have to be here yelling at me. No, there's a greater concept of authority. There's one that we don't have the time to form an opinion on it before we're already obeying it. Jump up in the air and you come back down every single time, whether you like it or not, and you're going to die. So there's authority. Now, like, how do you describe it? Well, certainly don't call it God because nobody likes that. But that's all it means. The judge, the authority, the one who says yes or no. Like when there was nothing and then there was something, it was because there was something that said yes. When there was no, all of a sudden there's yes. That's a judgment. That's authority.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it back around to what the question actually initially started this. So like all the stuff you just said since the last time I asked this, I think without exception, with all the statements, that's something also a Muslim would still say. They'll still make the same claims about physical laws to require someone to give those laws an entity, something to ground them, and all the other reasons that you mentioned. So a Muslim's going to hand that also word for word to Alan the Alien.
Well, God's made it easier for us. God's made it easier for us. If Alan the Alien wants it easy, he'll go with the God who understands how stupid people are and explains it in a way even a child could understand. You're wrong. He's right. Let him take care of you. That's the religion.
If Alan the Alien,
a gecko could understand it.
If Alan the Alien followed all this that you just said, and then Alan the Alien says, I want to accept Allah as Muslim, or I'm going to become a Muslim and Allah is now my God, where did Alan go wrong?
Well, I mean, as in, let me change. My headset's dying. I really got to change it real quick.
Yeah, no worries.
But let me talk through it. As in all other religions, it's about trying to prove yourself to be worthy. Like, people say they want to worship a god, but they really just want to join a cult and have a bunch of friends. But in the meantime, they want to be able to prove that they're worthy of something. So they go finding a religion where they can do things to make them to put themselves on some kind of ladder of holiness and look down on other people. So if their heart is not true, I would say, if they're not seeking after God, if they're seeking after self, then they'll find a religion like that. And
So
if they are seeking after God, they'll find their way out of a religion like that.
So you're saying that if Alan chose Islam over Christianity, Alan had a motivation, a heart issue? Wasn't
Yes.
Wasn't
At
in the right
least
mind?
at least temporarily, or I mean, not in every case. Like some people are just taken advantage of. Some very intelligent person puts their arm around them and teaches them a bunch of crazy crap, and they go off for a while. But their heart doesn't change, and eventually,
So do you think
we hope that they find their way out.
do
Right?
you think that's also the case for every single person who chose Islam over Christianity? Every single person on the planet. There's probably millions, tens of millions of people who have faced this choice and they chose
No,
Islam.
there are people who are, like I said to you, there are people like maybe you're a Christian calling yourself an atheist. And there are a lot of people who love God, calling themselves a Muslim, calling themselves a Hindu, and they just don't have the right knowledge. But, when they go to sleep at night, when they wake up in the morning, they're thanking the one that made them.
All right. So my final question then is, so you basically said, just to recap, if Alan the Alien chose Islam, it's either a heart condition, a motivation issue, or they're just lying to themselves, maybe honestly, but they're deceiving themselves. If you're wrong about all three of those possibilities, and somebody genuinely believed Islam over Christianity for all the right reasons that you
explain that.
think, yeah, but how would you determine that? Like, how could you confirm or falsify such a thing?
Well, because how I know things to be true or exist at all is because there's a God. From one moment to the next, the thing in my hand is still in my hand. There are rules, So and even more so now that I've established a relationship with that God, where I consider some of the things that I read and see and know about him to be true, then I have a comparison. I'm at an advantage there. The alien has to go through the bumpy road that I did, but fortunately, I'm past that. You can be there too.
I got another question, but I think we've gone on pretty long, so I'll go ahead and
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm
Thank you
dragging
for
you
the
got your whole show out.
no,
Thanks
no,
for
you're
giving me
fine.
that
Thank
time.
you. Thank you for the conversation with me. Pierce, you want to have any final lines of questions with Victor?
Yeah, I wanted to ask one last question.
Sure.
Hypothetical. If we lived in a world where a god happened to not exist, what would the world look like? How would it be different than it is now?
It would be blowing up into a million pieces because there are no rules and no one who cares to prescribe them.
How do we know that? How do we know that it would be blowing up?
Because that's what God means. I mean, it's, Christians and atheists alike have a misunderstanding of the term God that really needs to be. It sounds like a stupid, dumb thing that a child should be able to understand. And I was, blown away when I realized it myself. But if you just think about the word God and what does it really mean and what it doesn't mean, then this will help you in your religious understanding very much.
All right, I appreciate it, Victor. But yeah, we'll wrap up the show.
Good talking to you
Thanks
guys.
thanks for
Victor.
chatting. All right. Well, that was a fun show, Eric.
That was, yeah, it was great. It was it's nice to get out and actually do some real street epistemology because yeah, it's difficult to do on live shows with huge audiences and other hosts and stuff like that. So yeah, this was great. It was very refreshing and I had a good time. Hopefully learned a few things.
Great. You seem to take a liking to the Alan the Alien thing.
I do. I mean, I'm a big fan of the outsider test of faith, and the alien thing is just a succinct way to like really get it across. I think it was a mistake introducing a robot to it, because then Victor got the understandably Victor misinterpreted that as some super intelligence when it's not. I'm just trying to like describe a blank slate roughly equivalent to your average human. So I think Alan the Alien is probably the best way to go with that succinctly. So but yeah, no, I think that's a great way to do it. And like I said, I love the outsider test of faith, because I think a lot of religious folks, they lay out all these reasons, and then they don't quite realize that, hey, this can apply just as easily to another religion. And then if it applies to other religions, then you aren't really giving us anything that we can use as a confident go in this direction, confident go in that direction. It all stays equal. And then that point, with a lot of like, if you get down to the nitty gritty of like, of religious text, the histories behind it, Quran versus the Bible, and whether the prophecies actually occurred and such, you can get down in those weeds. But I think before you get into that, there should be some overarching reason. Like you can say that we have this and no other religions do. And that reason should logically entail some type of truth behind the religion. I've yet to hear it, but I'm hoping one day I might, because I wouldn't mind believing again. I wouldn't mind having a faith to rely on, having that comfort, hope, meaning, and purpose that, oh, hey, God's in charge and everything's okay. The world's not gonna, maybe tomorrow a meteor's not gonna hit the planet and kill us all. Like having that security and that comfort would be nice. So it'd be nice to have, but I've yet to see it, but maybe one day I will. But no, I had great conversations tonight, good insights into the people and what they believe. And Piers, yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. This was excellent, and I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So we do have an after show. I know you're probably headed off probably to bed, and that's probably where I should be.
Yeah.
But
I'm on the West Coast. It's only 9:30 here. I'll need to get a bite to eat, but I can join the after party.
All right, cool. Snow just dropped that in the chat. I already put it on YouTube. So yeah, I don't have any final words. Do you have any final words before I end the stream?
Nope. Just keep on. For those of you who didn't get a chance to talk, but you guys were in the queue, we're sorry for not getting to you. It's hard to determine whether certain conversations go long or short, but hopefully everybody took away something they can kind of ponder and think about. And when you're considering those things, think about your confidence levels and how they're changing with this new information, this new reasoning. The whole purpose of this is to think. So please take this away and think. And if it reinforces your current beliefs, that's great. You at least thought about it. And if it weakens it, that's also great. You're probably unentrenching a false belief, and you start really exploring that. And finally, if you're experiencing cognitive dissonance, don't worry, embrace it. You're supposed to use that as your motivation to find out the truth and take advantage of that. So yeah, thanks.
Right. Well said. I'm supposed to plug PNR, and I'm not going to say it just because I'm supposed to. PNR is actually a great place to be. So politics and religion, Discord server. It's in the description of the video. It's also, I put it in the chat like at the beginning of the stream. So you can find it there. You can join. It's a great place to be. Well, we're going to go. I'll be at the after party. Maybe Eric will stop by after he grabs a bite to eat, potentially.
I'll be stuffing my face with a hamburger when I join. So
there you go. All right. That's it. Peace out.
Bye, folks.